Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. Today, we are going to do some much needed Lakers talk. We have avoided talking about the Lakers in detail on this podcast for a few weeks now. We've been waiting to see how the tides have turned after a very poor start. We have a member of the pod here who had AD winning the MVP last year. Obviously, that did not come to
Top,
fruition.
top three, top three.
Top three. But nonetheless, he has been playing like he could arguably be in such conversation this year if the Lakers continue to pick it up and play like a above 500 team like they have over the last 10 games. So we'll give it off to Tyrik first to talk about the Lakers' recent performances that have included a very impressive win over a Bucks team that was very much an argument for game of the season so far.
You know, I gave AD a lot of criticism, man, because he let me down last year. I haven't publicly apologized because I don't think I expected him to ever get back to top five form. And you can argue he's probably been the top five player in the league so far this season, especially over like the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's been incredible. Really found his stride when LeBron missed a few games, but he's coming off a week where he was averaging 38 points, 13 rebounds, I think like 3 or 4 block shots, and the Lakers were 3-1 in that span. And that game against the Bucks, like you said, that was probably one of the most competitive games of the season. And AD outplayed Giannis, which is something that we probably haven't seen in maybe the last 3 years or so. Like, it's been a while since AD thoroughly outplayed Giannis in a game. So he's been very impressive, man. And we've always said, I think all of us kind of had this same feeling, like the Lakers are only as good as Anthony Davis is going to be. And he's been their best player this season. He's been one of the best players in the league this season, and that's why they're having so much success lately. Now, they still have a ways to go. I think they're like 2 games back of even the play-in right now, but they look a lot better compared to where they were like a month ago, because we were looking at them like they might not even make the play-in. Now it's like a realistic possibility that they can get into the play-in, and, LeBron still has to, get back into his full swing because LeBron hasn't looked like, LeBron from last season or like the LeBron we know, but AD's been great. Westbrook has been playing really well in his bench role. And I've been very impressed, man. And Darvin Ham, I think, like, you can kind of see his coaching identity is starting to get installed into this team. And, it can only get better. I don't think it can get much worse than what it was early on in the season. But with Anthony Davis playing like this, they have a real chance of at least making the play-in and maybe a playoff, push in that case.
Yeah, I will throw in some skepticism and say I'm not entirely convinced yet. Now, when it comes to AD specifically, I think that his play definitely is – that's a big enough sample size to say I think at least for the rest of this season going forward, barring any sort of catastrophic event, I do think that he'll be able to continue this high production, especially given the fact that just the play style and like the shot selection is more so inside, really buying into more of a center role and less of those mid-range jumpers where when they were falling, he looked really good, but then they stopped going in, and that was sort of a big part of his downturn. The thing is just looking at the nuance and like the little winning ways the Lakers have had, you're looking at like, it kind of started with you beat the Nets with no Ben, no Kyrie, Pistons. You beat the Lakers. The Lakers beat the Spurs 3 times. And so it's like a lot of those wins, it's like a lot of this has kind of been against bottom feeder-esque teams. So as far as can the Lakers continue to be that good as a team, I still think I need to see a little bit more against some more upper echelon competition. But as far as Anthony Davis's individual performances, I do think there's a lot of positives to take away there.
That's fair. But you also, those are games that, we look at the Lakers like they're more talented than those teams, or at least they have the top end talent. But even like last season, games like those were not guarantees. OKC, even without Shea, those weren't guaranteed wins. Even against the Spurs, those weren't guaranteed wins. So you kind of got to take it like, we will take those wins. And if that jump starts what they have going on now, I have no issue with it. You got to win those games, and they won those games, which is very impressive. And then they go and beat the Bucks in Milwaukee, which is not something that's very easy to do, especially with how good the Bucks have been this season. They've been kind of under the radar because of how good the Celtics have been. But Milwaukee only has 6 losses on the season, and one of those being the Lakers. So I kind of get what you're saying, but you got to start somewhere, and those are the games that were on their schedule, and they won those games. And, if we looked at them early on in the season, they probably would have lost those games, until they kind of started to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely take both of those points. And like you say, Gabe, obviously they haven't won against great teams, but they've looked a lot better while doing it than they did during the first 10, 15 games of the season. So that's the most encouraging part. Obviously, AD's been on a bit of a different level since then. Lonnie Walker hasn't really been talked about as much as he probably should be for the production he's been given. He's more than comfortably stepped into the replacement of Malik Monk role. He's finally found a little bit more consistency to his game that he's been lacking in San Antonio through the first few years of his career. Starting to hit threes a lot better than he was last year. So he's been a big part of that production as well. Of course, Patrick Beverley has been in and out of the lineup, but him being in has helped. Dennis Schroeder has been back from injury a little bit more over the last couple of weeks. So they're getting a few pieces back. Ultimately, like you said, Gabe, they need to just continue to do it against better teams, which do I expect them to continue to go 6-4 against all playoff caliber teams? Maybe not, but I think they've shown that over the last few weeks that they are a better team than they were a month ago. And I think we're also at the point now where if AD continues to play this way, if LeBron can continue to stay healthy and hopefully improve a little bit on his early season performance, if they continue to get a little bit better three-point shooting now that they have had over the last couple of weeks, they should be fine. As it always just has been with the Lakers, the biggest concern is just going to be staying healthy. As long as AD can stay healthy, as long as LeBron can stay healthy, as long as some other guys who are on their bench who are still vets, although they're not as old as they were last year, but still guys that are back ends of their careers are going to be playing valuable roles. Having those guys stay healthy is going to be the most important part. But if they can do that, they definitely are going to be in with a shout for the play-in tournament. Like you guys said, they're only about 2 games back, but things are so tight in the West, they might only be 2 games back from the play-in tournament, but they're also only about 6 games from the 1 seed. So there's still a lot of room for movement up and down that Western Conference.
Yeah, I think that is the best thing going for them is that while we're a pretty significant portion of the way through the season now, there is just so much time left because we're talking all this positive and it's like, oh, it's gone so well recently and a lot of wins and just a lot of impressive play from the top end. But at the end of the day, they're still 13th in the conference. And talking about a team with LeBron and AD being 13th in the conference, like that would just scream to me like an overall failure. So it's like while you're on the upswing, I do think that before we really start giving some significant praise, like we at least got to see them be 500 and like in the playoffs, not 3 seeds below the play-in. I should at least in the play-in. I mean, like if they don't get to an 8 seed, but they're hovering around like a 9 seed for a while, but at least like if they can get to 500 and maintain that for a little bit, then I'll be like, okay, maybe this team will actually be competing for something. Because right now, 500, the Timberwolves are not even in the play-in.
I mean, that's fair, but the Warriors are also 500 and they're in the play-in. They just have one more win.
But that's what I mean. Like you gotta be at least at that 500 level and be consistently there. If it takes AD putting up master classes of like 50 and 17, 45 and 12, like if you're expecting that every night to get to 500, his play is going to be ridiculous, but it's not a good sign for the team that he'd have to do that for them to win.
I don't think they're expecting that. I just think, AD's he's in a groove right now, and they're trying to find their identity as a team. And I think that's more important than anything because last season they didn't have an identity, positive identity. Their identity was we're going to be terrible defensively, and LeBron, please save us. Like that was their identity. This season, it's like LeBron's comfortable playing a little more off the ball when Westbrook's in the game, when they're all in there together. And it's about feeding AD, getting him paint touches, not, him not settling for jump shots. And then guys feeding off of that. Like, I'm glad Devin mentioned Lonnie Walker's playing really well this season. Even though Patrick Beverley's kind of stats may not always be amazing, but his impact is always going to be there in some way or another. It's just small things like that I think you got to take the small wins, man. You have to take the small wins, especially with the West being as tough as it is. But it's a positive sign that they're on the upswing right now. And you look at teams above them, like Utah's not been playing well lately. Dallas is as wishy-washy as they come, and they depend on Luka probably more than any one player is dependent upon. So, they're a very uncertain team. And, Minnesota's not playing well. Golden State's up and down. Like, look at all the teams above them that are, like, in that range. They are all struggling right now, and the Lakers are playing their best basketball. So I think you got to take those small wins. Obviously, there's still 4 games under 500 out of the play-in, but it's looking a lot more positive than it did, just like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, a few weeks ago, and most specifically to start the season, this Lakers offense looked like one of the worst offenses we've seen in a long time. And now this team looks like, yeah, okay, they're solid. At even the most pessimistic person on the Lakers right now, objectively, can say that they're solid. And I mean, that's not something we were seeing 3, 4 weeks ago from this team. So definitely positive strides. How far they take it, that's definitely the question when they start getting into a tougher part of their schedule. But I think we can definitely say at this point that this team has made a lot of improvements from where they were 3, 4 weeks ago to where they are today, and their odds at making a play-in tournament spot because of it.
Yeah, we can actually talk about them now and not like have utter disgust about their play. Like it's been a lot better, man. You got to give credit where it's due for sure. But I do agree with Gabe. They still do have a long way to go if they want to at least make the playoffs. You know, it's still a little bit of a ladder to climb because they dug themselves quite a hole early on.
Yeah, they definitely did. But it's the beauty of the West. Everyone's still on top of each other, so everyone's got a chance.
It's madness out there, honestly.
But who's at the top of the madness right now? A team that I do believe I did expect them to get some home court advantage. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to like finish the season as the 1 seed or anything, but I do think we're starting to see a little bit more separation at the top, and the Pelicans are up there in that top 3, which is really cool to see, especially because this top 3, all relatively young led. I mean, the Suns have Chris Paul, but he's been kind of in and out. So really, who's been doing the heavy loading for all 3 of these top teams right now is young players. And so that's cool to see for the future of the league. But Pelicans specifically, this team is just – they're deep, they're young, they play hard, and they're scary, man. I think this type of success, like I said, may not stay the 1 seed the whole season, but I think they're super legit going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they might not stay as the 1 seed, but when I look at the Western Conference, at the very least, based on how teams have played so far, they have looked like at the very least one of the 4 best teams in the Western Conference. That's for sure. Whether they stay at the 1 seed, that remains to be seen. But them being the 1 seed is interesting to me, and it speaks to their quality and depth and how some of their guys have stepped up. Because when I look at this team, obviously Zion's been good as of late, but Zion didn't start well, which reasonable because he hasn't played in so long. Brandon Ingram has been out and out of the lineup and hasn't been amazing when he's been in. He hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been amazing either. JV's production has been a bit down this year, not fully due to himself. Part of it's just due to volume, but his production has been down. And CJ has missed some time lately as well, and he hasn't been amazing this year either. He hasn't necessarily played anywhere near as well as he did when he was acquired after the deadline last year. So other than Zion over the last few weeks, their core guys, their all-stars, haven't really played up to the level that would have been expected, yet they're still the 1 seed. And I believe those 3 guys in BI, CJ, and Zion have only played 10 games together this year. So they're performing this well with guys in and out of the lineup and production waning at times. Trey Murphy is arguably the biggest part of that. He has become a guy that was supposed to be the guy that was going to be the ready-to-go first-round draft pick out of last year's draft. Didn't necessarily always get the playing time, had a big role coming into the back end of the season, the play-in tournament and the playoffs, and has been brilliant this year. Not just a three-point shooter on offense. He's been getting a little bit more involved with a bit of shot creation, good defense. His length and ability to space the floor has been very productive for this team. Jose Alvarado has continued to be productive. He's just coming off a career night where he dropped 29 points, if I'm not mistaken. Najee Marshall has come in and become a very valuable bench piece as well out of nowhere for a guy that was hardly in the rotation for the majority of last season and has been shooting the ball really well, been giving you some good defense on the other end. And not to mention the fact that Larry Nance is still there, who was a very underrated addition at the deadline last year to come in and play some small ball 5 minutes. So they just have a lot of guys that have produced very well between some of the development of some of those young guys like Alvarado and Trey Murphy. And of course, Herb Jones deserves a love for his continued great defense in there as well. And you throw in some of the vets that they have. And Zion's been doing his thing the last few weeks, which is arguably the biggest reason why they are 8-2 in their last 10 and have won 5 in a row. So the fact that they are this good without having that much continuity because of injuries and having Brandon Ingram and CJ not play anywhere near as good as they can, this definitely bodes well for the Pelicans moving forward, and there's no reason why they can't continue to hold one of these top seeds throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, well said. You even kind of lowballed Jose because he dropped 38. Like that's an absurd game. Like that just shows you like the talent of NBA players because that's somebody who was undrafted, and now he has a significant role on a 1 seed currently, which is very impressive. Zion has been, since he came back from his recent time miss, he's been great, man. That point Zion thing, people kind of had issues with it when Van Gundy was doing it, but this roster is a lot more talented. The pieces around him really fit that kind of play style, and he's such a good decision maker, and he demands a double team every time he puts his head down because no one defender can bang with Zion consistently for a full stretch of a game. And he's been making great decisions. He's been scoring the ball really well lately. He's been rebounding. This team's looked really well. They really have. I'm glad you mentioned Trey Murphy's been playing so well. And I think that I saw a stat earlier. I think their big three has only played 3 of the last 10 games, and they're 8-2 in that stretch. They've just been playing some really sound basketball, and depth is the reason why. Even like Dyson Daniels, I don't think you mentioned him, but he's played really well lately, and he's like shown like he's a good decision maker. He can defend, so off rip he can be an impactful NBA player. Just such a fun team to watch, and it's kind of scary that none of their guys except for Zion lately has really been playing up to par. Like we were talking preseason, like they could potentially maybe have 3 All-Stars if they are a 1 seed, but now it's like BI's been kind of when he's been in the lineup. CJ, that's my guy, but he hasn't looked amazing most of the season. And Zion over the last couple of weeks has looked really well. But other than that, collectively, they haven't played that much together, and they haven't looked that well together either. So it's like kind of scary how good this team can maybe be. And this is their first year together and, really having some type of real expectation. So very excited, man. I mean, they could easily be the Memphis Grizzlies of this season. Like they can probably hold a top 2 seed as the season goes on, just because of how uncertain the West is. And there's only been a few teams that, we can really look at like, yeah, they're actually really good. Some other teams we're kind of looking at like the Kings are a 5 seed right now, but it's like, we hope the Kings stay there. But are they realistically? Who knows? The Jazz were playing really well, but now we look at them like this might be more what the Jazz are. Like the West is just so uncertain, but I think, like you said, the Pelicans are one of the few teams that we can actually have a firm opinion on right now.
I just think it shows how well ran the team is overall. Just like, obviously you're going to have that talent, but even while the talent's in and out, while different players are dealing with different circumstances, I've been a fan of Willie Green since he came in. Even when this team started off last year, like super terribly, I remember they were on national TV for some game, and it showed like one of those like coaches huddles where he just like kind of shows the coach's speech or whatever. And I don't even remember what exactly he said, but I just remember like listening to that and being like, this guy just seems like him. I don't know. I was hooked from the first time I ever heard him talk, and it just seems like the more time he gets with this team and the more he gets to instill his identity to it, it's just like it doesn't matter who's out there. They're gonna do well, but then at the same time, once that top end talent is there, they're able to come in and really show off their stuff. And it's not even just on one side of the ball too. It's just why I think it's just even more so able to be upheld throughout the course of the season is because, I mean, when you're top 6 on both sides of the ball, top 3 in defense right now, like if one's not hitting one night, like if somebody's scoring a lot on you or like you just can't make a shot that night, you still have a chance to win that game because on the other side of the ball, you still know that you can play well. So I think it gives them a lot of flexibility in how they can win. They have a lot of pieces, and there's just so many things going right for this team in the past probably 2-3 years at this point that is just so good to look at.
One thing I want to touch on, it's so funny you led that with they ran so well, like from a structural perspective, when not even 2 full calendar years ago, they were like probably the worst. Like people wanted David Griffin gone. Nobody understood the Stan Van Gundy hire to begin with, but he was their coach, and it's just like it flipped so fast. It's just so funny you say that. Like that's just how quickly it can change in the NBA. But what was their biggest question mark coming into the season, y'all? It was their defense, and the fact that they're top 6, it's just kind of mind blowing. That's why they could probably keep this up and
top
be
3.
even scary. Yeah, they can be a scary team because we knew they would be. We thought they would be fun offensively, but we were all like that defense might not be good enough to really make some real noise. But here we are, a top 3 defense.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Gabe, because that's been the biggest thing. And I mean, that's what they've built now, not just the fact that They have good depth. The fact that they can bring guys in and out of the lineup, the fact that Willie Green's been a great head coach and should be, at least if they continue with this rate, should certainly be in coach of the year conversations. But the fact that they've just have such a good defensive identity, and that's what brings you success, regular season or playoffs. And not to diss JV, but if you can have a number 3 defense in the league with JV at center, that's pretty darn impressive, because as much as JV is a solid post defender and rebounds the ball well, he can get picked on sometimes out in the perimeter and pick and roll. So you're doing something right from a coaching standpoint and from a player personnel production standpoint if you are performing that well on the defensive end. They've done a great job this year, from Willie Green and his staff, from how the bench has played, from how the starters have played. They've done a great job so far. They get BI back and they get CJ back and they start performing at an all-star caliber level again, and it's going to be scary to see what they can do the rest of the season.
It's one of the things that makes me love the NBA, because, and I know the Suns have not looked so good in their last 2 games, but just for the 1 and 2 seed to be the Pelicans and the Suns, and both of them in the past couple of years were in those situations of like the entirety of NBA Twitter being like, oh, their star player should request a trade out. He should get out of there. They're terrible. They're never going to do anything for him. He's just going to have meaningless seasons and waste his whole prime. And for both of them to then just like figure it out and show like, hey, give it a little bit of time. It's just like poetic. It's almost poetic.
I got a question for y'all though, because you mentioned JV's not the best of defenders, right? Say if a Miles Turner really becomes available, or maybe just a better defensive big that would fit what New Orleans does, because they have the pieces, they have the draft picks to go out and get somebody they really need to. And given how confusing the West is right now, if you was in that front office, would you make the trade to try and maximize this season, or just stick with what you have and see where it goes this year?
I would not make that trade personally. I think you're playing so well, you are the 1 seed. I mean, at that point, like, I'm saying, just let it, like, don't mess that up. Don't really tamper with that. Your team is still so young. Like, why do you need to maximize this season? Almost every player on this team, there's still a lot of players who they could grow into something a lot more than what they are currently, even playing at the advanced rates they are so young. So it's just like, I think you want to see a little bit more from everybody and see, okay, who do we really want to keep, who might be a little bit more expendable. And then as you get sort of a little bit further down the road, then you maybe start looking at those trades. But at least for this season, I think it's just the perfect blend of like, we have youth and flexibility, but we also are winning a lot now. And it's just like, you're in such a good situation. I don't think you should tamper with that yet. Now, maybe this offseason comes and they make something out of it, but it's like, it's not like this is championship or bust at all. If they end up like the Grizzlies last year and they go out in the second round to like a team who ends up winning the finals or going to the finals, that's a successful season for not only a small market team, but a small market team that is really probably going to be making their first playoff push in this era, at least like a deep playoff push. I know they made it last year, but through the play-in and then facing a 1 seed, there wasn't really a ton of expectations.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm torn on that front. I don't think they make a move just because I don't think that anything really makes sense. Like, the only guys they're probably acquiring as far as the center position goes is Podol, who I don't like there, because with how they're using Zion, I want them to have a center who can space the floor a bit. And obviously Podol's not doing that. And I don't feel like you move JV for Turner. That just feels like a very lateral move to me. Obviously, he's a better defender, better rim protector, but as far as three-point shooting goes, honestly, like, Miles Turner's better, but marginally. I feel like Miles Turner's three-point shooting has just always been overrated. He's good, but, I mean, he's never been shooting 38% from 3 out there. He's never been some amazing three-point shooter. And you get way more of a paint presence, a better rebounder, and a better post scorer in JV, and I like his dynamic on the team with that. Most importantly, if they didn't have Larry Nance off the bench to play small ball 5, then maybe I'd be a little bit more invested in wanting an upgrade there. But Larry Nance closes out a lot of games there. He's very good at the small ball 5 position. He competes well out there. He doesn't get bullied for size in many of those matchups. So I'm not too concerned about that. The one caveat I will say to your point, Gabe, is obviously they're not championship or bust this year. However, similar to the position the Suns have been in the last couple of years, I think they need to be a little bit more aggressive than you might think. Because although CJ obviously isn't as old as Chris Paul is, CJ is not exactly young. And there's no guarantee that BI and Zion are going to have as good of a third option again in their time in the Pelicans throughout their career. So this, not necessarily this year, but you start thinking towards next season, the year after that. CJ's got another 3 years after this under contract in New Orleans. That contract over the next 2 to 3 years is probably their best time to win. That's probably going to be their best window. Maybe they acquire a third star again down the line, but I mean, those trades don't happen very often, and it's unlikely due to salary cap reasons and just New Orleans Pelicans free agency reasons that they're going to get another star via free agency. So you maybe don't have to go all in for it this year, but if a trade becomes available at the deadline or next offseason and you can make a trade to this team that doesn't have to add another star because you already have those guys, but if you can improve the team and you can improve your backup point guard play, or you can upgrade or JV in a significant manner, something of that nature, then I think that's definitely something they have to look at, because the window probably isn't as long as some people would expect it. And that's not to say that BI and Zion couldn't win on their own, but it's going to be a heck of a lot harder than if you have CJ McCollum around.
Yeah, I think there's just so much in there with like circumstance and who's available as well. Just given the fact that at probably like 25, somewhere between 20 and 25 teams right now are still competing for at least a play-in spot. And so it's like, how many teams are actually selling that have something that they'd want? Especially like you look at those Pacers trades that have seemingly been in talks for like half a decade at this point. It's like clearly the Pacers value them higher than what they're worth, because otherwise you would have think they'd probably been traded forever ago. Because if those trade talks are really that prominent, like surely there's been offers on the table, and clearly those offers have been declined. So it's like, I don't know if I'm going for that one especially, but then it's like you look at Cleveland last year and it's like they went through the whole season, and then now all of a sudden in the off season somebody's available and you have the pieces, so then you can come in and win that sweepstakes. So it's like, if somebody's available that you think is actually the deal to put you over the top, then I say you make that, but it's like, don't make the deal for the sake of making the deal.
Definitely.
That's a great point. The Cavs waited. Yeah, they waited it out. Yeah, that's a great point, Gabe. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards the side of just kind of see what you got this year. Because I think as long as no big injuries happen, knock on wood, they will be closer to what the Grizzlies were instead of the drastic fall off that Cleveland had. Like, I think they'll be closer to that. So yeah, and they'll have the pieces down the line to, you know, replace the CJ if they have to, or, you know, upgrade a JV or whatever. Like, they have draft capital, they have young players, and they just have a ton of talent overall that they can make a move if they need to. So, and I think we all trust this front office enough. At least they've shown us the last year or so that they'll make the right decisions, you know, when the time comes. But yeah, I think they'll probably just stay put because, you know, from what we've seen so far this year, we're over 25% of the season done. Like, they have the means to at least be competitive once the postseason comes around.
Definitely do. I will ask, as far as the top of the Western Conference goes, are the Pelicans the team you feel the most confident in right now, or is there someone else in the West that feels like they might be a little bit more of a threat?
Yeah. This is going to sound so bad because I had them as an 8 seed. The Memphis Grizzlies, man. I didn't expect Jaren to be back as soon as he came back. That's one. Desmond Bain is going to be coming back soon, which people forget. Like, he's missed a lot of time recently. And Ja is who he is. This is another team that's very deep. They got a lot of bodies. They're well coached. If they need to upgrade, they have the means to make upgrades too. They're like the Pelicans, but I see them in just a higher light because they had that playoff experience. They really gave the Warriors a really good run, even when Ja went down. They still had a real shot in that series. Like, they were like a game away from, I think, being up 3-2. Like, they played really well in that series. So it's I'm gonna say Memphis, man. I think having Jaren back, what he does, he deters pretty much every shot that comes into the paint. I think since he's come back, I think he might be, you know, leading the league in block from a blocks per game perspective. Like, he's been so good. and they're only going to get healthier, hopefully. And they had the experience already, a couple playoff series under their belt. I have a lot of confidence in them, which is crazy because I had them as an 8 seed, but they've been playing such good basketball right now. And if Desmond Bane comes back and he's playing as well as he was early on in the season, they're going to be a tough out for, I think, any team in the Western Conference. Even if Golden State starts to ascend, I think there will still be a very tough out.
Yeah, it's so hard to write Golden State off, especially knowing the nature of so many of their veterans that are like, we're going to be cool in the regular season, and then we're going to get to the playoffs, and all of a sudden it's a different story. So they're always dangerous, even if they're at the 10 seed right now, but they started off pretty poor. So them being at 500, I expect them to finish above that. And then just still, even beyond the Grizzlies, if you gave me a Pelicans versus Suns series, I know the Pelicans went out sad last year and they're sort of faltering a little bit right now, but we've still seen some incredibly high highs from that team and that roster this season, especially with Devin Booker looking better than ever. I mean, if that series went deep to like game 6 or 7, I'm expecting Devin Booker to show out and put on a hell of a performance. So I'm probably taking the Suns in that situation still. But to me, the top 3 teams in the regular season right now are probably the ones I'm taking as the top 3 in the playoffs.
I don't know how you feel, Devin. I've had 2 totally different opinions about the Suns all year. At first, it didn't look that good. Then they started to look good. I'm not that confident, man. Chris Paul really looks like the step is gone. Really looks like he lost a step. And when that happens, which we expected that to happen at some point, he's still pretty good, but he's not what he was even like compared to last season. DeAndre Ayton pisses me off so much, man. He's way too talented to be just giving you a cool 16-9. Like, he should be 20-12 every night. He's way too talented. Like last night's game, Blake Griffin should not be playing better than you. And you should at least be giving me like 22 and 12 against Blake Griffin, man. No disrespect to Blake. He had a great game last night. But come on, DA. Like, he has to be better. Like, when you look at a star taking a decline, as Chris Paul, we all expected it to happen, your young star should be the one stepping up. You just got paid. So what's the excuse now? Like, you got your payday. Like, you should be producing even more now. And he's not. He's just the same DA from last year. Even worse than, when they made the finals run, because he was pretty solid in that run. But until he starts to step it up, I have no faith in them because Chris Paul clearly looks like he's taking a step back from what he was.
Yeah, before I address DA, full credit to Devin Booker. He has been the biggest reason why this team has been so good this year. Obviously, their defense has been very good as well. That's the other thing that's keeping them so relevant. But I mean, Devin Booker is going to be on the dark horse side of MVP conversations, given how good he has played, and because the Suns are still one of the best teams in the West, and he is fully deserving of that. And it's just been him in the defense, because ultimately, like you said, Chris Paul has missed a lot of time, and it's to no fault of his own. It's just aging happens. Eventually he was going to lose a step, and it looks like we're kind of at that point. We might be beyond the days of all-star Chris Paul, and so, like you say, DeAndre Ayton's got to step up. Now, as far as guys stepping up, I will say, although he has had a few rough performances over the last week or so, Mikal Bridges has stepped up a lot this year. His shot creation, an ability to impact this offense more than as just a three-point shooter, has improved this year finally, which is nice to see. Not saying he's going to be some second option. If he's the second option next to Booker, that's the problem. And he has looked like he has to be that for a lot of this season, which is a concern. But yeah, I mean, DeAndre Ayton, he is such a special talent. But over the last 4 games, it's the description of the problem of DeAndre Ayton. He has dropped 8 points, and then 20 and 25, and then 8 again. He is so ridiculously talented. His ability to finish in different ways in the post is great. He's, even as a center, one of the most talented mid-range shooters in the league. And it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen regularly. And you just get these flashes once a week, twice a week. And it's like, okay, this is why he was a number 1 overall pick. This is why he was given a max deal. This is why he's such a valuable player. But then the next night he'll drop 6 points. And it's like, what happened? So it's so frustrating because it's clear to see that he has the talent. It's clear to see that he can be a very, very productive two-way elite center in this league. And it just doesn't happen regularly. If we start to get that and he can become a 20-12 guy every single night, then this team can win. Until that happens, I think they're going to be fine in the regular season because Devin Booker is Devin Booker, and he is absolutely balling right now, and their defense is borderline top 5 in the league. So they're going to be a fine regular season team. But if Chris Paul is what it looks like he is now at this point in time in his career, which is very fair, and DeAndre Ayton does not become a more consistent elite force, then good regular season team. But unless they get a favorable first-round matchup, that's probably as good as they're getting is through the first round, and they're probably toast after that.
It feels like so long ago when they made that finals run, but they made that finals because DeAndre Ayton was dominant. And even if it wasn't scoring the ball, he was dominating the backboards at least. He was getting so many extra possessions, especially in that Clippers series. And even though Giannis is gonna do what he does, but DA he battled in that series still. He just had the task of guarding the best player in the world. That you got to tip the cap. But one of the main reasons why they could not get out of that Mavs series, because the first 2 games, if I remember correctly, DA looked very dominant. The Mavs didn't have an answer, and then it just stopped, and it never came back in that series. And that is, like you said, Devin, classy DeAndre Ayton. It's a couple good games here, and then it's like you're sending out SOSs like, where the hell is DA at? Can't find him. And it's good that Mikhail's having his best season offensively, shooting the hell out of the ball, like from a efficiency standpoint. It's good that Campaign has bounced back. But, dude, you paid this man over $130 million to just give you what he's been giving you over the last, 2 seasons. You need more, man. He's way too talented to just be giving you okay numbers. Like, I don't know if he's just unhappy or what. It's not a lack of touches, man, because if Chris Paul's out, you're looked at as to be the next best guy. And I can't get down with that, man. That's why, they're a championship team if he's playing to the level that we want him to be. But that's just an idea. We haven't seen it consistently enough. And that's why they're probably a one-win series team. Like, they'll maybe win the first-round series, like you said, and then lose to a Pelicans or a Grizzlies or maybe a Warriors in the second round.
Yeah, this team, even if they match up with the Mavericks in the first round, which if the playoffs started today, that would be the matchup. Suns may be toast because it reminds me of and this might sound kind of like some hometown bias, but it sounds like the Chiefs and the Bengals in football, man. Chiefs always beat everybody, but it's like they can't get past the Bengals. If somebody else takes out the Bengals, which is really reasonable, Chiefs are going all the way. And it's like the Suns, hey, man, if somebody can take out the Mavericks, maybe they'll go a little bit further. But grander scheme, I feel like these are all they might be in a solid contendership to win the West, but on a grander scheme, on the grander scheme, I do not think that the NBA championship is do not think it's going to the Western Conference this year. I think the top 2 in the East, whichever one would come out, would definitely smoke anybody in the West right now. And even Cleveland to an extent. I might feel more confident in Cleveland than the Suns or even the Pelicans.
My dad said those exact same words. He thinks the championship is running through the East. Last time I talked to him, he said those exact words. It's funny.
And I can't really blame you for thinking that because the only teams I think that have a shot in the West is Golden State, assuming they can get it together, and Memphis. And that's probably the only 2 teams I look at. I'm still really high on Memphis, but other than that, I think that's it. But once Memphis get back healthy, I mean, we haven't seen their 3 All-Stars play together yet at all this season, and Bane was legitimately playing like an All-Star. He probably would have been a shoo-in for an All-Star berth if he didn't get injured. And we know what Ja can do. We know what Jaren can do. Most encouraging sign for Jaren is that his foul number is the lowest ever in his career. That's been the biggest thing since he's been back. Still been dominating on defense, averaging over 3 blocks a game. But his fouls are also down to 3 a game, which is great to see. So if they can continue that, I mean, they just continue to bring in good young players and develop guys from Aldama playing a good role this year to Jake LaRavia and David Roddy and these other guys coming in as rookies and playing valuable minutes. Zaire Williams is now back in the lineup as of a night ago at the time of recording this. So they keep continuing to find those guys that can give them productive minutes. And the biggest thing now is Ja is obviously an elite talent. His biggest weakness on the offensive end is his perimeter shooting. But as opposed to last year, where if you're needing that three-point shot down the stretch, they were probably looking to Dylan Brooks more often than not, just based on he's the vet, he's the guy, he likes to take the shots. You got Desmond Bane now, who's looking like the legitimate all-star caliber guy who's taking those shots down the stretch. And that's a legitimately scary thought for other teams across the Western Conference, because we're seeing now that Bane is much more than just a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, to say the least. He has all of the bag to his offensive game, from three-point shot creation, mid-range game, attacking the rim, you name it. The fact that now that if you need that bucket down the stretch, it doesn't just have to run through Ja, is arguably the single biggest difference to Memphis's potential playoff run this year compared to last year.
If he wasn't a Western guard, Desmond Bane, there's a lot of years where he'd be a shoo-in for an all-star team. Like, there's a good chance this team could be the 1 seed at all-star break. I mean, they're a half game out of the 1 seed right now. And they're heating up a lot right now as well. Just got Jaren back, won 4 in a row. Like, they're looking really good. Desmond Bane is averaging like 25, 5, and 5 as a second option. There's a lot of first options who don't even do that. And it's not and it's contributing to a lot of winning at the same time. And the guy plays on the other end of the floor as well. Does it efficiently. These are to me, I mean, I'd have to look at like a list of everybody and make some further decisions about it. But definitely, if he doesn't make an all-star team, this is a very all-star caliber season. Like, he's pretty bona fide, I think. He's going to be around doing good things for a while.
It's crazy to see how quickly his game has ascended, because year one, he was just that standstill. He was shooting like close to 50% from 3, but he was just, getting some minutes here and there, got into the rotation later in the season, and he was just a shooter. And I think he caught a body at the end of their playing game, but that was it. Year 2, just expanded a little bit. We saw a little bit of playmaking ability maybe when Ja was out, blah, blah, blah. He was coming off the bench to begin the season, and then, he was better than the Anthony Mills, so he started getting the starts. And then this year, it's like, damn, like Devin said, he has a bag on him. Like, he could really, create for himself, for others. It's a shame he got hurt, man, because he might have continued that pace and probably would have been that shoe-in, like you were saying, Gabe, for an all-star appearance. So hopefully he gets back healthy. That's the only thing. And, yeah, they have one of the better backcourts in the league, not just young backcourts, but I think overall, because we know Ja he's a superstar in this league, and he's only getting better. But if Desmond Bane continues to do what he's doing, man, that's why I think they are one of the teams in the West that we should be more confident in, when we're looking at even contenders this season, because they have the experience, they're well coached, they have the depth, and they just have that. It's just something about their energy, man. They really play with that kind of fearless, we don't think anybody's better than us mentality.
Right, yeah. And the fact that he's been, Desmond Bane's been out for a month now, and this team is still at the top of the conference, heating up actively, that's just a good sign for the team as the whole, because he's a guy that when he comes back, he'll just slide right back in. I don't think there'll be any issue there at all. No sort of getting back into the swing of things. And even if he takes a second to ramp back up to his top production, there's so many other guys there that can carry that weight that it's not going to be a detractor to the team at all, I wouldn't imagine.
They got so many bodies, even John Conchar has been playing good minutes for them. They have so many bodies on that team. And Tyus Jones had a career day the other night. So many bodies, and it's really it's always next man up. And that's why I think, like you said, Gabe, when Bane comes back, when Jared comes back, it's they never miss time, because they just have that kind of that chemistry, that environment where it's we can slide whoever in, and and we're going to get some type of production from them.
Yeah, it just a great thing to see. Like they made that DeAnthony Melton trade, and it's like, hate to see him go, but it makes sense. They just have so many guys and so many people who need minutes and have to be in the rotation that they had to make some of those tough decisions. But yeah, the fact that like pretty much every player on this team has a solid future ahead of them is just insane how good they are this quickly.
And they're the one team, like, they're never afraid to make that tough decision either. Like, I feel like all their trades on paper look like, why are they getting rid of that guy? And then they just get better, and it's like, okay, it makes sense now. They just know what they're doing. So I've learned to never judge any move that they make, because that front office, they don't lose trades. They know exactly what they're doing every time.
Yeah, they do an excellent job at A, finding NBA talent, and B, finding guys that fit their culture and fit their identity. They are arguably the best front office at doing so.
A team that would be quite wonderful to work for.
Praying. Praying, man. I had to send that tweet earlier, but I kept it on the private circle though, because we'll see.
You can't say that while you're working for another team and on the public feed. I understand, but they're so fun. Like, obviously talking about their on-court production and stuff, and it's like there's good teams that, like, the Suns got really good, and bro, I feel like everybody hates the Suns.
Hated them.
I don't hate the Suns. Like, I like the Suns a lot.
I still don't get that really, because I feel like the Celtics, they worked out after a game recently. Nobody said anything, and I'm like, if the Warriors did any of this, y'all would eat that stuff up. But the Suns, I guess, I don't know why they got that villain tag, but it's got to be Chris Paul. It has to be Chris Paul.
I think it's more Devin Booker. I think it's the like all those like offseason things, like him complaining about the double team, like him complaining about like the mascot or whatever. It's just so much stuff that people are like, bro, what are you doing?
It's crazy though, because Book used to be so loved when they were terrible. Everybody loved Book. They were like, Book, do better for yourself.
Yeah.
Devin Book, he got to turn heel, bro. He just has to play into it. At this point,
Kobe did. That's what Kobe did.
Perfect. Yeah, the Sun people just love the Grizzlies. I think they definitely get a little bit of hate, but like overwhelmingly, I feel like the general consensus, at least from like the side of social media I'm on, is like,
yeah,
they just have so much fun, bro. Like, and everybody's always talking about like, oh, the NBA has no rivalries. Like, everybody's so buddy, like it makes it so boring. Like, this is your team, bro. This team, like, they come into these games, they come into playoff series, they talk their shit constantly, and most of the time they back it up to a certain degree. Like, yeah, they lost to the Warriors, but they gave them a good fight. Like, it makes a lot of sense why they were talking the trash they did. And so just overall, like, for people who like rivalries, for people who like young, fun teams on the court, just flashy stars, athletics plays, like anything. I feel like it's just so hard to dislike this team. The only way you reasonably could is if you're like a Timberwolves fan or something, and they took your team out last year. Like, you have a personal reason to feel that way.
And Warriors fans, they obviously, that's the only like negative discourse between those two franchises, Timberwolves and Warriors, that I see on Twitter ever.
Yeah, it's nice. Outside of that, definitely a very likable team, to say the least.
Closeted Grizzly fans on this podcast.
It is funny though, because like everybody hates the Warriors, so like of course everybody would like the team that's like talking that shit to them.
Fair. Yep, y'all kind of mentioned. Well, Gabe kind of brought up how the top of the East is so good, man. As a Celtics fan, I'm kind of scared that we're gonna peak too early and miss our window. Like, I feel like that would just be my luck as a sports fan. Like, we look so dominant right now. Rob Williams is gonna be back within the next 2 weeks, according to Woj. I mean, even like Al Horford's missed time, Marcus Smart's missed time, but we still just look so good, and it looks like even better than last season. The ball is not sticking. It's not a lot of isolation basketball. Tatum's playing the best ball of his career. Brown's playing the best ball of his career. Malcolm Brogdon looks like a 6 Man of the Year candidate. Like, everything's going so well right now. And I'm just afraid we're going to peak too early, and then we're going to get knocked out in, like, the conference finals. Like, I just could see that happening, man. It just worries me as a fan. I don't know if y'all ever got this, like, that feeling maybe when the Raptors were a 1 seed, you're like, yeah, we're the 1 seed, but it's like, I feel like now the target's on our back and we're bound to fail. Like, that's the kind of feeling I'm getting right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I felt that too much as a Raptors fan, although I can't lie, there was definitely some concerns when DJ Augustine crushed us in Game 1. But with regards to Boston, there's two ways to look at it, and I think there's a middle ground, is that I don't expect the offense to continue as well as they have, just because there's so many guys shooting preposterously well from the three-point line. And it's like, is Al Horford going to continue to shoot well from the three-point line? Probably. Is he going to continue to shoot like 47%? Probably not. And that's not to say he's going to be a bad three-point shooter the rest of the year, but there is probably going to be a bit of a decline at some point in time. So as much as I still expect this offense to be one of, if not the best in the league, it's probably going to slow down eventually. The good side is this defense hasn't seen its best at all yet this year. Obviously, you mentioned Rob Williams has not played yet this year. He's going to be back soon. That's going to have a tremendous jump to this defense. Arguably, should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year, or would have if he didn't get injured. Adding that back to your team now, so Al Horford could slide to the 4. You get a little bit more oomph to your bench. That's just going to improve everything from a bench production standpoint, and especially from your defense. For a team that's still been solid defensively after struggling a bit through the first couple of weeks of the season, to now adding Rob Williams, you're going to go back to being one of, if not the best defensive units in the league. So although that offense probably isn't sustainable throughout the entire season at the level it's been at over the last few weeks, the defense is going to improve and the offense is still going to be really good. So there's probably a middle ground there where I don't expect the pace of the Celtics' success to tail off too much. Maybe it slips a little bit as the offense slips a bit, but I mean, the defense is going to be a heck of a lot better with Rob Williams back in. We know his impact on the defense. We know his impact on the offensive end as well from his lob threat, his playmaking ability, if they can get him involved a little bit more in that sense as well this year. So he's going to bring a lot when he comes back. So bit of a decline offensively, sure, but ultimately I think Boston are going to be fine.
Yeah, I definitely cannot compare it to when the Raptors were the 1 seed, because like I've talked about this so many times, bro. I was praying to the Lord above that Victor Oladipo it's the same thing that I was just saying with the Mavericks and the Suns, or like the Chiefs and the Bengals. Like the Raptors, that year they were the 1 seed. There's a good chance they could have gone to the finals. Now, there's not a chance in hell they were going to beat the KD Warriors. But if somebody took out Cleveland, I think the Raptors could have made a run at the finals. But as soon as Cleveland won that Game 7, I was just like, all right, it's been a good season, y'all. Been a real good time. And then it was simply wraps. There's definitely going down like 2-0 to the Bucks as well. And I was like, might have been a good run, but then Kawhi hulked up, and it was just a different time to be alive. But I think the Celtics team is so locked in right now. Like they had the Prince come and watch the game live. They asked Coach about it. He said, "There's only one royal family." That was hilarious. But yeah, like they had royalty courtside, didn't care, just wanted to win some games, and like you guys have mentioned, like starting center isn't even back in the rotation yet. Defense is going to get so much better. Like you imagine the offense stays to a certain degree. And also it's like there's nobody else in the conference you really have to fear specifically besides the Bucks. And it's like if you go to Game 7 and lose to the Bucks, like is that really peaking too early, or was there just another great team that went out and beat you? Like, I don't think if they lose in the conference finals to the Bucks in Game 7, I don't think it's a negative reflection on Boston. It's just like you lost to another great team with the best player in the world. So am I really concerned about them, like, with peaking early or anything like that? Not really, because it's like if playoffs start today, facing like Philly or Toronto first round, I think they would win very handily. And then second round playing Brooklyn or Atlanta, I think once again they win super handily. Like, even if they weren't playing their best ball, not only is every team below 3 wildly inconsistent, but I don't even think they've had stretches that show better than the Celtics' average basketball. So it's like, even if they peaked in like January, I think if they're playing at a 75% of their current selves in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, I think they have it in 6 or less.
Let's hope, man. I'm thinking about the Suns last year. They kind of peaked in like November. They went undefeated in November. That was probably the best that they looked all year. I don't know. It's just, it always kind of worries me a little bit, even just any team starting off so well, because it's a long season. A lot of stuff can happen over the next, 50 or so games, however many games are left. So, yeah, it's a lot, but they have looked amazing. I saw a stat. I think their offensive rating right now is sitting around like 120, and that's the same offensive rating that they had post-January last season when they hit that big run, which is just crazy because the whole talk about the Celtics last season, that second half stretch, was like their defense being so good. And now it's like their offense is leading the way. The defense is starting to pick up, and then you got Rob coming back. And overall, I just think this team, the bodies, like they have more bodies this season that they can play confidently. If Derek White didn't really look well offensively his entire time in Boston last year, except for like games here and there. He's looked really good this season. He's been shooting the hell out of the ball, so that regression is probably going to come. But even if he's back to being at least like, 38%, if he shoots like 38%, that's so good for Derek White, because last season he could not buy a jump shot except for like a couple games against Miami. So just small things like that. Excited that Rob Williams is going to come back, and hopefully he just plays his way slowly so he's not, going to re-aggravate anything, because he's the piece for this team. He's the key piece for them, like being a real champion, this season. Like, if he's healthy, if he's playing as well as he was last season before the injury, this team's going to be tough to beat in 7 games, against anybody, even Milwaukee included.
Hey, fun stat. The Celtics offense this season is so good that this year's Suns have the 6th greatest offensive rating of all time, and this year's Jazz team have the 10th greatest offensive rating of all time, and are still both over 3 full points lower than the Celtics' current offensive rating. 2 top 10 offensive ratings of all time and 3 full points below. Celtics are over 2 points above the 2nd greatest offensive rating of all time of the 2021 Nets. So it's just like, what else can you look at? What can you say? It's just
it's
beyond
so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch too, because it just seems like every shot's going in. Like, I feel like Grant Williams hasn't missed this season, especially from the corners. Like, he's shooting side step threes now, which is like where did this come from? Sam Hauser found a rotational spot, and it seems like he always makes all of his jump shots. Like, they've just been playing so well, man. Like, it's gonna regress a little bit, but the defense is gonna pick up, like Devin mentioned, more likely than not with Rob coming back. So, yeah, they got all to make it, man. It's just about finishing the job this year. They definitely look like a lot more motivated. I was expecting early on in the season maybe like they'll come back maybe a little sluggish, but they've been, on tails from the jump. Like, they've been like looking like a team that is still mad about how the finals ended. So that's definitely a good look, because that championship hangover is a real thing, even for the losing team. So it's good to see them coming out with that hunger.
Are the Celtics America's team?
No.
I feel like they may. I feel like they may be America's team. I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at it, and I'm like,
Does America have a basketball team? I don't think they do.
Most. I don't. Bro, hey, listen, because a lot of the top teams, a lot of the top stars, a whole lot of international basketball, a lot of international players really taking it worldwide. Sounds like almost the whole rotation and their top talent, American born, man. It might be America's team. I don't know.
think it might be the Lakers still, man.
If a 13 seed is America's team,
Probably.
that is rough. That's real rough.
Look, Cowboys have been really good the last few seasons, so don't take this to heart, Devin. But Cowboys went through a stretch where they were probably the most mediocre team in the league, but they're still America's team.
Yeah.
So why can't the Lakers be, man?
Are they really though? I feel like America's team became the Patriots after about 2005.
I don't think so.
Nah.
To me, America's
Patriots
team
are
is
like-
that everybody bandwagons to, man.
Patriots are like the Warriors, and
Yeah.
the Cowboys are like the Lakers.
That's a perfect comparison.
What teams that were good like 40 years ago, kind of washed up
Sure.
now. I don't know because I don't know. To me, the Lakers as a historical franchise, the Lakers surpass anybody, just simply based off the fact that they've won big in like every single era almost. The only era they didn't really win in was like the 90s, and they won right before and right after it. Like technically they won a championship in the season that started in 1999. So if you want to count that, it's like, you know, anything before the 80s, like they were one of the premier teams because there was like 12 of them.
Yeah.
In the 80s, dominant, early 2000s, even late 2000s, and then they won the ring in 2020. So it's like the Celtics and the Lakers might have the same amount of rings, but like literally like 12 of the Celtics happened in black and white. Whereas the Lakers have been spread out like successful throughout.
They got like 5 rings in Minneapolis, man. Those aren't even LA Lakers. If you really want to go here,
I don't know. That's got to be that's a fake stat. Got to be a fake stat because they got 1 with LeBron, 5 with Kobe, and 5 with Magic. So that's at least 11 post 1979.
maybe
I feel like Jerry West and Wilt got like 1 or 2.
They did, and then the
That's
other
at
5
least
they have
12.
17. They have 17.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 5 in Minneapolis.
Dang,
Come on,
it's
Four
not
Our
a
history,
fixed,
man.
5 of the first 6 years that Minneapolis, the Lakers, were in existence, they won it all. 5 of their first
Dynasty?
6. They did not win another one after that for the remaining 5-6 years in Minneapolis.
still compare the Celtics have won 1 title since Larry Bird retired,
Hey, nobody needs to talk about that.
and since then
We just made the
since-
finals last year, though, so it's coming. It's coming soon.
It's
man.
coming. It might be because I don't know. Everybody was saying that if the Bucks had Chris Middleton, that y'all were cooked last year. But the Celtics, they got Malcolm Brogdon. They got a full season of this top offense, top defense. I think healthy versus healthy, the Celtics still might run it back. But to me, and this is like how it used to. I think this is how it was in some other years too. Like I think like in 2018, bro, the NBA Finals was the Warriors versus the Rockets on who was going to win the title. Both of them were going to absolutely clear the Cavs. This year, if that Western Conference or the Eastern Conference Finals ends up being the Celtics versus the Bucks, that's the NBA Finals, bro. Unless the Warriors do something crazy, I think that's
Right now, I agree. 100%
Yeah.
agree.
I'd agree with that right now, but I also think there could be I don't think it's by a wide margin. I think that could change. Again, I only think it's Golden State or Memphis who changed it, but I think that could change. But
We're really
right
saying
now,
Golden
right
State.
now, I'd agree.
We're saying Golden State purely off of respect because
Yeah.
they have not looked good.
Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah,
respect.
and many of us, included myself and a large part of the media, didn't give them the respect last year, and they
Me too.
surprised both of us. So I'll give them the respect this year until we're like 50 games in and they're still at 500. But
why?
they
Because y'all
some time.
hate Curry. Because y'all hate Curry. I understand.
I don't
Curry
dislike
is the only
Curry.
reason that team is 500 right now. So.
Yeah, because
Curry and Wiggins.
because he's the
Yes.
second best player in
Wiggins as well,
basketball.
I won't say that.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
See, we're backtracking again.
No, I said he was
Oh,
good. They're still a 10 seed.
Gosh, bro. They hate Curry. Y'all heard it here.
Even
first.
Luca,
Do
who's
not
got a
hurt-
worse
hate
team, is
Curry.
got
Oh
above
my
500.
gosh, bro. We need to stop with this, bro.
I do not hate Stephen Curry. Yeah, this is a misconception. that if a 12-year-old Warriors fan comes on and that's the first thing that he hears, they're gonna hate me and Devin, bro.
No,
like, that's
bro.
not good, Gabe. You can't
They're
be
gonna
saying stuff like that.
Nah, bro. Because listen, I'm putting on for the 12-year-old fans and saying y'all hate Curry. I don't understand. Listen.
I don't think there's an NBA player I actually hate right now.
I understand. I understand you guys like your Euro basket, but Steph Curry clears. I
just think that they're better. Bro. I just think that there's like 4 or 5 players that might be better than Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And with the way Tatum's been playing, maybe 6.
I'm sick to my stomach right now.
I'm just kidding.
I'm about to say, bro.
Tatum is the MVP of basketball.
Clear
stand on that. Still, the MVP of basketball.
Tatum.
He's the MVP, but how many times has the MVP been the best player in the league? Recently.
It's a good question.
Recently, when Giannis last won it, probably.
In 2020.
Was Giannis the best?
I still
feel like Braun was still the best, though.
In
20, bro.
Back in 2020 was a debate. I don't know if I would have taken then, but
Giannis
I would have had Don. If he wasn't 1, he was 2.
His first MVP year, Kawhi was the best player in the league.
Playoffs, he was the best player. Kawhi kind of gets this, like, he gets so boosted because he's amazing in the playoffs. But to be the best player, though, you got to do that over the course of a season and playoff success too.
I think you got to do it when it matters. I think that's the most important.
No,
yeah,
it has to be a healthy dose of both things, man.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. When LeBron was racking in perennial 4 seeds, but then sweeping through the East, he was like,
he got a 4 seed one season.
I don't know, man.
Perennial
Other than that, the Cavs were at worst.
No way, this guy just said that.
Yeah, that's a crazy accusation, man. That's a crazy accusation.
Hey, you guys can say I hate LeBron just like y'all hate Curry.
If that's the case, we need to start giving MVP after the playoffs. If that's the case,
they should. The most valuable player in the league is the one. What's the most important stat in basketball?
That's insane.
What's the most important stat in basketball?
That's a lazy take.
What?
That is a lazy take.
What's the most important stat in basketball, bro?
Rebounding. Got to be able to rebound when
Bro, the most important stat in basketball is if you won or lost. If you have the biggest impact on winning games, that's the MVP, bro. And if you're winning the games when it matters.
All right, so Andre Iguodala was the 2015 MVP. That's what we're doing.
It's not 100% of the argument, but
most important player. He was the most important player in that finals, right?
No, he wasn't, bro. Steph Curry was.
Who won Finals MVP? If we're gonna be lazy,
it was the wrong decision. How is that lazy? How is that lazy to say the playoffs matter? How is that lazy to say the playoffs matter?
That's not lazy, but to say
that winning is the most important thing in basketball.
But to say that is the end all be all is a very, very lazy take.
When did I say it was the end all be all? Steph Curry's regular season, bro.
You literally said Kawhi was the best player in 2019.
He had a great season.
He missed like 25 games that year.
And what he was really
and the
good
Raptors and the Raptors were what 20-5 in those games. Like
he was really good in like the 57 to 60 that he played.
That he missed,
bro.
He wasn't the MVP. Oh. He probably wasn't even top 3 that year or top 5 in voting.
No, definitely
not. If they counted the playoffs,
but they don't.
That's so different. And that's the thing is the best player in the world, bro. That was how the conversation started. Was who is the best player in the world?
If that's the case,
he outplayed Giannis.
If that's the case, we can really look at individual players like Luka. If he's one of the best playoff performers ever already, he's got to be one of the best ever, right? If playoffs hold that much weight,
he was one of the best ever against the Suns. I'll tell you that.
That's the conversation we're going to have to start having. Same thing. Anthony Davis, one of the best playoff players ever. Those are the conversations we're going to have to start having.
Here's the thing: is that Curry has done that on literally like 5 separate occasions. Plus, had great regular season. Plus, had great regular season numbers.
There are also times where playoffs he wasn't even the best player on his team. A few years actually.
That's arguable. Steph Curry was the system. Kevin Durant put up.
If you want to bring up, I can bring up KD, man. Like that. KD extended that dynasty a lot more than people think, man. He made it a dynasty, actually.
Oh my gosh, bro. To me personally, the Warriors are running it back at least in 2017,
and they probably would have got beat again.
I cannot.
If KD didn't come, if I was a betting man, I would have bet on that Cavs team because that Cavs team was a lot better that season than the year that they won the championship. It's just when you add Kevin Durant, it just looks like there's that much of a gap between those teams because KD is one of the best small forwards to ever touch basketball, one of the best players to ever touch basketball.
At least you're giving KD his respect, man. I'm tired of KD slander. I'm
not here to help that. So
I'm an avid KD fan. Because
KD,
the thing with KD, bro,
guy. He's always going to do what he does, though. Because
people keep saying this whole narrative of like, oh, he can score from anywhere, but what else does he do, bro? How many big games has this man put up high rebounding and assist numbers? I'm not gonna say that he's like Steve Nash with the playmaking, but bro, he's a decent for a small forward that's game is built around scoring. He's a pretty damn good passer. He has stretches, especially in Golden State, where he was a pretty damn good defender. Now, is he like the greatest defender now that he tore his Achilles? Maybe not, but then, I would expect a 7-footer to rebound pretty well, so I'm not going to gas that up too much. But, like, overall, like, Kevin Durant has a pretty rounded game. And especially in that, I know it was a while ago now, but in that Bucks series, like, he was really doing everything. He wasn't just, like, score. Like, he was really doing everything. And I hate that narrative of, oh, he just gets buckets, but what else does he do? He showed multiple times, and especially in Golden State when he didn't have to score as much, there was a lot of other little things that he was doing that are like, okay, he is more than just a guy who gets a lot of buckets.
Dev is the leader of that fan club.
I am, but that's the thing, right? It's like what you said is true, but it's like, okay, he did that in a playoff series when he needed to, and he did that 4 years ago in a different uniform, which understandable after a significant injury, but that's just not consistently what we get from him. So I can't give him the credit of that's what I see from him 70 games a season. If we did, might feel a little bit differently, but he can be a good playmaker. I don't see it often enough. I can't give him the credit for it. It's one of those things where during his Golden State days, I felt differently because, like you said, he was a much better defender. He did make more often at a higher level. We just don't get that anymore at that higher level as consistently, and understandably so, especially on the defensive end. But that's just where I'm at with it. It's if I get that consistently, sure, but to a lesser extent. But similar to DeAndre Ayton, where I know he's talented, but I can't give him credit based on his talent. I have to see it on a regular basis, and we're just not. And it's similar to the Kawhi argument, where I need to see that on a regular basis throughout the regular season to give you MVP. I can still have you in those best player conversations, but as far as MVP and being a valuable player to your organization, if you're missing 20, 25 games a season, it's going to hurt. If I'm watching KD and I see that he has those playmaking abilities that I know he can defend well, but I only see it for 10 regular season games in the playoffs, and I can only give him so much benefit of the doubt.
I think that's my problem too, is I just value the playoffs so much more than anything else. I'm just like, if you get to the playoffs with a solid enough seed, and then you just turn up and like you beat everybody and just look that dominant when it matters most, like I'm just going to value that so much higher, especially in a situation like KD was in where everybody around him was just looking so hobbled and just absolutely cooked. Like, to me, it is just so impressive. And there's things he does, and while it may not be the most consistent over like an 8-month stretch, it's just the fact that I just know he can do it when he needs to do it. And that's what makes me put him higher up. But like, we're just talking about him getting his respect about being able to do that. It is more in like the, all time, like he's definitely capable of that, rather than discrediting that and being like, oh, KD's not even a top 20 player ever. All he does is score the ball. Like I hate those arguments.
I'm kind of in the middle of where you guys are right now. We know KD can do what Gabe is saying, but like Devin said, it's not always consistent. My thing is, if KD has to do all of that for your team to be like winning, I think it more so speaks to the structure of the team opposed to KD, because there's only a select few guys that you can just like, we need you to do all this for us to win, like what Luka does, what LeBron did for so many years. James Harden did that for a lot of years. Like, there's only a few guys like that ever picked up a basketball that could do that and can win at the same time. And even like Luka's not winning championships. James Harden hasn't won any championships. LeBron's really one of the only dudes that you could actually look at that has done that. It's asking a lot, and Kevin Durant is not that type of guy. And if he has to do that, he's probably going to get hurt, or the team's just not good enough to win a championship, which is no fault to his own, man. But we know KD is super talented, and there's just things in this game that he's not elite enough to do consistently. And even if he is doing that, that team's probably not winning a championship. It's just a fact of the matter. So I see what both of you guys are saying.
Yeah, I really do think in the Golden State days, like they did do so much to just let him show out as much as he could, though. Like, you think like, oh, that's an all-star cast, and now he's playing with a bunch of nobodies. In 2018, he took 18 shots per game. Today, he is taking 19 shots per game. He is averaging one more field goal attempt with that much less around him.
But I bet
he has one co-star and a third sort of star that doesn't shoot the ball. So
is his usage higher this year compared to Golden State?
That would have to be a dive into advanced stats.
I feel like it would be, but that's because for somebody like Kevin Durant,
it is.
Golden State was like basketball heaven for him. Like that is the perfect.
His usage percentage this year is 31.7%, which is the third highest of his career. The only two highest times were with OKC. His highest in Golden State was 30.4. The other years being 27.8 and 29. He's been over 31 each of his 3 years in Brooklyn, even with James Harden and Kyrie.
That's tough. Yeah. That Warriors system makes it to where, at least at that time, nobody's usage was going to be like insane, like just crazy. But KD's a very low maintenance player anyways, because he can score in a phone booth. Like that's just how like talented he is. He doesn't need many dribbles, he's just that good. But yeah, I see both of your arguments or your dialogue. I see both sides to it.
I want to stay in the East and talk about the Cavaliers for a minute. Do we think the Cavs at this point in time are closer to the Celtics and the Bucks, or are they closer to the rest of the East?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because if you ask me off face value, I'm saying like neither. Like, I'm saying like
such a cop-out answer. Oh my god.
I know it's so bad because it's like I'm thinking like if I was making an Eastern Conference tier list, like Celtics and Bucks are S tier, and then like Cavs are like A tier, and everybody else is B tier or below. Like it's like it's just like it's like their own tier right in the middle, because it's like if you said Bucks versus Cavaliers play a 7-game series and they run 50 simulations of it, I'm saying that the Bucks win that series like 45 out of the 50 times. But then if you say Cavs versus Nets or like Cavs versus Hawks, I'm taking the Cavs an overwhelming majority of the time.
I'm gonna actually answer your question with one of the choices that you said. I think they're closer to the Bucks and Celtics, but they're like just over the edge. Like they're not that far from. I do see what Gabe is saying. They're kind of like in that their own middle of the pack where it's like Celtics and Bucks, we know that those are championship teams. Like, they can win it this season, and nobody would be surprised. The Cavs are like a step below that, a tier below it, but they're better than everybody that's below them, for sure. But I would say they're a little closer to the top two teams than the rest of the pack.
If I have to pick an answer, I'm saying that they're closer to 4 and below, simply because I still think that the Bucks and Celtics are taking that in 5 or 6, whereas they're taking it against everybody else in 4 or 5. But the Bucks and Celtics versus each other, I think that's going 7.
Here's my thinking, though, and this matters a lot to me. They don't have just one guy that you can put the ball in their hands and be like, because in the playoffs, this really matters. Like, that's why the Celtics had the playoff success that they had last season, because they had 2 guys that put the ball in their hands, make something happen. Please make something happen. The Cavs have that. Donovan Mitchell is a proven playoff performer, and even though Darius Garland has not played in a playoff series, I have enough confidence in him that the lights are not going to be too bright for him to where he's going to diminish once the playoffs come around. Having 2 perimeter guys that you can put the ball in their hands and be like, we need something to happen because, we're in a 3-minute scoring drought right now. We need something to happen. They got 2 guys that I think can do that in the playoffs. And I think that's very big. Like, even like the Nets do, but the Nets are so inconsistent. It's like we don't really trust them enough, to really be much once the playoffs come around. The Cavs have that, and defensively they are very sound with their bigs and what they do. That's why I think I have a little more confidence in them being more of a solidified team that can actually make something happen in the playoffs, opposed to where the rest of the pack we're looking at like if all the teams below them lost in the first round, nobody would bat an eye. Yeah. But I think like the Cavs are more like we kind of expect them at this point to win a playoff series, I would say. At least I do.
Yeah,
I mean, there's also only one team below them that has home court advantage. So, like, technically, only one team below them should be expected to win a first-round series.
Sure, but even if the Nets won a first-round series, I might be a little surprised. I'm not going to lie, just because of how inconsistent they are. Even though they have KD, Kyrie, Ben, I would still maybe be surprised. Same thing with the Hawks. We've seen the Hawks make a conference finals run.
Like
just
I said,
the way that they are, I might be surprised.
I do think the Cavs are a tier better than anybody below them. It's just but I think it's because of almost everything else. Like 2 perimeter guys, it's like the Hawks and the Nets low-key have that. They just don't have a lot of other things.
They don't have the turmoil. They don't have the defensive inconsistencies. Like, yeah, they're more sound than everybody else, that's such a good question because it's weird to rank them right now.
Yeah. That's exactly why I wanted to ask it, because like you said, Gabe, they are in a tier on their own. There's no doubt about it, but it's just that interesting nature of, do we think they're closer to being a contender, or do we think they're closer to being with the rest of the group? And like, it's tough, like you say, because they are in the middle. But if I look at this team right now, I feel better about them being a contender by the end of the season than I feel stronger about them being a contender than I do about them losing a first round series. And that's ultimately where I'm at right now. I have more confidence in them pulling off an upset against the Bucks than I do of them being upset by the Nets or the Hawks or the Pacers or the Raptors or one of those teams below them that they'd play. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but ultimately this is a team, like you said, Tyrik, that have 2 all-star caliber perimeter scorers, when we know how valuable that is, that has one of, if not the best defense in the league, period. And we know how valuable that's going to become the playoffs. And that's not even mentioning the fact that they still have not had a single game from a 6th Man of the Year candidate in Ricky Rubio. How good he is when he comes back after his injury, that remains to be seen. But that bench production can't go overlooked either. So they're certainly not with the Celtics and the Bucks on that same level. But at the same time, if 3 months down the road they are playing great basketball and they started to slide more into that contender mix, I'd be much less surprised by that than if 3 months' time we were like, yeah, okay, maybe they're not any better than the Nets or the Hawks or the 76ers. That's kind of where I'm at, and why I make the case that they're probably a bit closer to the Celtics and the Bucks.
I think it depends also somewhat how you feel about their top talent. Because when you think of like teams that are actually contending for titles, like that's a team with Giannis or Steph Curry or Jason Tatum or Devin Booker in recent years, like players that, at least to me, are like top 10 players. So it's like, or at least like maybe not Devin Booker to some people, but at least like the other ones are either superstars or bordering on being a superstar. Like, is Donovan Mitchell a number one on the championship team?
The way he's been playing this year and the way he's been in the playoffs, yes.
And I think that's a good argument to make as well, because you could say the same thing about like when Miami's been in the conference finals and in the finals 2 out of the last 3 years. It's like Jimmy Butler in the regular season, hell no, he's not a superstar. He's not a top 10 guy. But then
in the playoffs is always, oh my God, is Jimmy Butler top 10?
And so it's like me as a guy who values playoffs a lot. I'm pretty high on Jimmy Butler, man. Pretty high on Jimmy Butler. Maybe not this season, but watch this season they'll sneak in as an 8 seed and they'll do the same thing all over again. I don't know.
I would hate to play them in the first round, bro.
Imagine. That's the thing though, is like even though I'd favor the Celtics and the Bucks in any series in the first round, it's like if you have to play Miami, that's a very, very annoying first round series. If you have to play the 76ers, obviously they've had a lot of dysfunction, but that's still a very talented first round matchup for a top seed. If you have to play Toronto, obviously the talent's not there, but Toronto is always a pain in the ass to play. Like, there's definitely going to be some matchups where it's like, yeah, Boston and Milwaukee should win this, but if you're a fan of one of those teams, you're probably not feeling as comfortable as you'd like to be as a top 2 seed going into the first round.
I had the same feeling against the Nets last season. Like, even though the Nets are as dysfunctional as they come, it's like, you still got KD and Kyrie. So, even though that was a sweep, that was like one of the more competitive 4-game series that you'll see. So, yeah, the thought of even playing Miami or Philly in the first round is just like, or even like the Hawks slip to the 8 seed or something like that. Like, it's probably not going to be an easy first round matchup for a top 2 seed in the East, unless Indiana gets in. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the Pacers, the Knicks, and if they somehow get in, the Wizards of the Bulls are probably the only fun matchups.
The Bulls stink. They're bad.
It's so weird because this is the team that was supposed to have a great offense and a poor defense, and they continue to have a better defense than they do offense, but they're bad. I don't think anyone would have expected that this defense would consistently be top half of the league since they acquired DeMar and since they acquired Vooch, and they'd be bad. That was just not the concern. If you would have told me last year to begin the season that if the Bulls were a top 10 defense, would they be a good team and like a top 6 or top 4 seed in the East? Man, I probably would have said they would have been, because I thought this offense was going to be good. But, I mean, DeMar is taking a step back this year, which, I mean, that's expected. I mean, no one can expect DeMar to continue the historic run that he had last year. He was as good as anyone could have expected and better last year. But as a unit, it just isn't working. Levine has been touch and go. Vucevic has been touch and go. Obviously, they're still missing Lonzo, which, I mean, we know the impact him being out of the lineup has, but it's tough because you just locked up Zach. You traded away some assets to get DeMar, and he's obviously not getting any younger. He's getting towards the back end of his career, even though he's probably someone that will age relatively well. He has gotten to a point where he doesn't rely on his athleticism anywhere near as much as he did the first few years of his career in Toronto, but they're definitely going to be one of those teams where we talked about earlier in the podcast of whether the availability in the trade market is really there come the end of the season when you get towards the trade deadline. It's still pretty unclear at this point in time where teams go, specifically when you look at Utah, who was supposed to ship guys off, the Pacers, who were supposed to ship guys off, who might be a little bit more reluctant to do so now. The Bulls could end up being one of those teams. Not that I think Levine goes anywhere because he's obviously just on his new deal. I don't think there's any way they move him, but DeMar could be a guy that gets looked at. Vucevic could be a guy that gets looked at, and that's not to mention guys like Kobe White, who's going to be a restricted free agent. Maybe they don't want to bring him back. Caruso's obviously going to be a guy that a lot of teams want. So the Bulls could definitely be a team that end up being involved in some trade rumors at the very least if they continue to play this way. Hopefully they turn it around. I mean, Levine's looked a little bit better over the last couple of games. Vucevic has had some games this year where he's looked good, but as a whole, they certainly have not looked great.
Yeah, this team's just caught in such a strange place overall. Like, the roster construction, it was like just enough to be good and be solid, but like not great for the long term really at all. I mean, you look at it, it's like DeMar's 33, and he was kind of like a core piece for them, at least definitely last season. It's still their best player by far, but then I feel like most people around the team still consider like Patrick Williams like a super core asset, and he's 21. And it's like your timelines, they just don't really match up. He's one of like the top young guys on the team, 23, but then Vucevic is a core piece for you, and he's 32. So it's like, what do? Do you let these young guys stay and kind of develop a little bit, or like, are we gonna really make a push and like just commit to like being as good as we can right now? And it's just like they're in a situation right now where I don't really see a great positive out, because a team built around DeMar and Vucevic, I mean, we're talking about the Cavs being closer to the Bucks or the Celtics. Like, no matter what this team does with this core, they're not competing for anything relevant at all. But then even the young guys they have, do I trust in Patrick Williams and Ayo DeSumo to be the core pieces of like a future contender? No, I absolutely not. Even like take those guys in a couple years, and not saying they're not good or even possibly could be like really high above average players, but take them against like the top two young guys on the Pacers or the Pistons, or, you know, like they even like the teams that are below them. Like, you're bad now, your top players aren't getting any younger and not probably any better either. And your young players, they might get better, but they're not going to be like stars. So at this point, like this team, if any team in the league besides maybe like Washington, I'm like, please blow it up. I'm like, please just blow it up. Just be done with it. It might be Chicago. They had their little like mini renaissance where, you know, had some really fun things going on last year. It worked for 1 year, but it's like kind of a wash now.
And they don't have all of their draft picks, which sucks.
They were really doomed to fail from the get-go, I think. Like, not even just going like in the DeMar era, but like going back to when you trade for Zach LaVine, like Zach LaVine optimally is like on a contending team is like a second or third star. And they traded for him as their first star. So then they were like a perennial 11 seed. And then you're never bad enough to acquire another top star to put next to him, but you're never good enough to contend for anything. So then you just trade for somebody who's available, who doesn't really fit his timeline all the way. And your picks aren't really good enough to build around him the best. And you're getting like the 7th pick every year.
There's a lot of issues. Yeah.
Stuck in purgatory. And I know they've done some overhauling in the front office to like make things better, and they did the best they can to just bring some winning to the city and do as much as they can. But it's just like I've never been able to understand the Bulls. Like, they just, since Derrick Rose, it feels like they've been so just like mediocre. And I still don't understand how you can be Chicago, have like the history of having like, and most people, or at least like around half of people's opinion, the greatest player of all time was on your team. One of the greatest dynasties of all time, like some of, at least just like if you look at it at face value, one of the most successful franchises in history, and like one of the 5 biggest cities in the country, and you can't sway free agents to come to your team. I've never been able to understand that. Like, I know it's not warm, but everything else that could possibly be going for a market is kind of going there. And so it's like, what is the issue with this team? Why can't they do that? And it's just like, please stop being committed to being mediocre, because from the second they made the Zach LaVine trade, this team has never been close to having a floor low enough to get a great pick and a ceiling high enough to do anything relevant. They've been stuck between 12 and 7.
And they jumped up that one time, drafted Patrick Williams. Most people thought that was a good pick, but now it's like they haven't really had. Well, last season he missed most of the year, but even this season he's been like in and out of the starting lineup, and there's just no room for him to really develop. Like they'll probably end up trading him away, and then he'll blossom somewhere else, like Wendell Carter has, and like just other Bulls, young players typically do. Like Kobe White's probably gonna end up doing. Like such a weird team. It kind of sucks because when they were at full strength last year, even though they were the 1 seed, nobody really believed that they were a championship team, but at least they looked good. They were fun. They were actually enjoyable to watch. Lonzo really going down, I think that runs deeper than people might think. Like, I think this is really showing, because ever since he went down with that knee injury, this team has just not looked the same. Through the end of last season, through the beginning of this season, they just haven't looked the same, man. I think that really speaks to just how impactful Lonzo Ball is as an NBA player, So, and the fact that, I've seen reports like they don't think he might be back anytime soon is very concerning. I would hate to be in that Bulls front office because it's like they have decisions to make if it continues to go as poorly as it has so far to start the season. And it's not going to be, choices that the fans are going to like, because I'm sure they at least enjoyed last season being in the playoffs. And how are you going to be able to sell the fan base on, hey, we're going to have to take another step back, really reset? That's a tough call to make for sure. So we'll see. They made a lot of moves too. Like they don't have their first round pick this season. Locked into Zach LaVine. DeMar is going to be going to the last year of his deal. I'm not sure what Vooch's contract is like right now, but yeah, purgatory is they're getting, if they're not already there, they're reaching that point for sure.
It's tough. Like you say, Gabe, and I'm glad you said it. Like they've been stuck in mediocrity for a really long time, and they're at a spot now where they're pretty much exactly where they were when they made the Vucevic trade. And that was supposed to be the start of a snowball of, we at least want to be a consistent playoff team. And most people realistically didn't expect this Bulls team to do much more than that. But I'm sure the expectation in that front office was at least, let's finally again be at least a regular playoff team, because that wasn't really the expectation when they acquired Vooch. It was them and the Raptors kind of on the bubble with Charlotte and the Pacers and the Wizards fighting for those play-in spots. It was them and the Raptors fighting between 11 and 12. And they're right back there again. But instead, like you said, they gave up a bunch of first-round picks, 2 to Orlando, one of which became Franz Wagner, which already hurts because Franz for Vucevic probably already is a trade that Orlando would not accept. And you still have one that's going away to Denver. It's tough. It's tough. Or San Antonio, my bad. But, I mean, yeah, you're in a situation where they owe away 2 more of their future first-round picks still. And they're in a spot again where, like you said, Gabe, they're just in the middle. They got a bunch of vets and a few young guys. And other than the Wizards, they're probably in the worst spot moving forward for any organization. Probably have the worst young core of any organization other than the Wizards. They're in a tough spot. Like you said, Tyrik, they're going to have some tough decisions to make. I don't envy the decisions that are going to have to be made in that front office, because they're probably going to get canned not long after, because they are tough decisions and they're going to have some rough results on the court. But that's ultimately where they're at, and not necessarily to any fault of their own, because like you said, if Lonzo Ball is still healthy, this team is probably much better. And they're not a great team, but they're at least on the better end of mediocrity that keeps fans happier and keeps them a little bit more involved in the playoff race. But without him, they're just not going to be there.
Shout out to Zoe, man. He's getting his flowers when he's not playing, which kind of sucks, but
hopefully he can have a full recovery at some point in time, and we see him again on an NBA court.
It's just crazy that Lonzo Ball is the duct tape holding the team together. Like, he is definitely probably much improved from the early days, and never was really bad. I think just kind of expectations were a little bit too high, but it's like, if you're relying on Lonzo Ball to come save your franchise, like, buddy, you got a problem. And not just literally beyond that. I was watching a video the other day. I think it might have been Rusty. That it was who is this this roster construction? Who is it built around? Because you is really not built around anybody. And so it's like, what even is the team's identity and like style even supposed to be? Because it's like you traded for Zach LaVine as your franchise piece, but like he's not like a like number one star on a good team. So like you traded for another star and you got like DeMar, but I wouldn't say this team's built around DeMar either. And it's like, there's no like fluid roster dynamic. It's just like they kind of like got the best players they could when they can.
Well, I'll say hindsight's always 2020. And like when they made the Jimmy Butler trade, like Zach LaVine was pretty much unknown. Like there were probably people that thought he would never reach all-star status, but he did, and they drafted Larry Markkinen. Obviously that didn't work out, but we see what he's been performing this season. Like that was the trade that they got back for Jimmy Butler. And then it's like, I think they got to the point with the new regime coming in. They're just like, we just at least want to put together a team that at least gets the fans excited and will be, like Devin mentioned, like at least a playoff contender each season. Now, you can't control injuries to Zach LaVine last season, his knee being messed up, and then Lonzo's knee obviously being where it's at now to where we don't know when he's going to come back. Those are things that you can't really control, so it's easy to look back and say that. But at the time, none of us thought the Bulls, with the moves they made, would be a championship team. But we all thought that they would be a good enough team to make the playoffs, which they did last season. Now this season, it's not that, but that's just the life of the NBA, man. Shit's unpredictable, and now, like we mentioned, the Bulls just will have probably tough decisions to make unless this miraculously flips around, which I don't expect it to.
It is real tough that like they never like I don't know, maybe their intention when they made the Zach LaVine trade was like, oh, he's a real solid piece, but now we're gonna get to legit like rebuild and be not good. But then they were just like too good in a bad way.
I mean, it's always when you're trading an all-star, you're probably not getting an all-star back at that time. You just got to take a young piece, which Zach LaVine, I think he was probably like 21 at the time. Maybe was coming off a 20-point per game season before the knee injury. And you just look at that like, we'll take this guy. We'll see if he ever turns out to be our franchise guy, but we got to take a flyer on somebody. So it probably made the most sense at the time. That's just the NBA, man. Like, you got to make certain moves. And that was the old regime, too, that made that trade. So, yeah, it's easy to look back, though, and say, like, what were they thinking? Zach LaVine's not the franchise guy. He's a franchise piece. Or DeMar's, aging and, how is he going to fit? And Vucevic, at the time, Vucevic was playing the best basketball of his career when they made the trade.
Yeah.
Just so happens he regressed a little bit. Like, it happens, man. It happens.
Yeah, he came off a pretty efficient 19-3-3 when he got traded, which is like, if you're gonna pick up a young piece that it's like, you don't want to give up a whole truckload for, but you want a guy who can possibly blossom. It's like he was probably one of the best pieces to get around that time.
Yeah, it's the NBA, man. So, like we said, like there are moves that we do not envy front offices having to make, and it's like how we were mentioning about the Pelicans earlier. Like, should they make a trade this season? Should they not? Because one trade can take you from being a good team to a great team, or that one trade can take you from being a good team to, now you're kind of like in turmoil and it just wasn't a good trade. Like, these GMs have tough jobs, man. Like, people talk about like, oh, I would make this trade and this trade. This is not 2K, man. These trades are like, these moves that you make are so like delicate. They're so important. And one trade the wrong way can turn you from a team with championship hopes to a team that is in complete shambles, which we've seen time and time again.
There's definitely a lot more variables than this player has a higher overall than this player. That's for damn sure.
Yes,
there is a lot of nuance to NBA trades and how they impact immediately and how they end up impacting things down the road. And Chicago's a great example of that. Just A, between a bit of fit, and B, injuries, and C, just regression you just can't foresee, specifically with Vucevic. And sometimes they look like good moves and it just blows up in front of you, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. And not much you can do about it. Like you say, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but at the time, no one really thought the Bulls were making terrible moves other than DeMar, which, I mean, obviously wasn't a bad move last year. So the one move that looked bad wasn't really bad. I mean, I know DeMar's not doing what he was last year, but even for as good as DeMar was last year, they didn't really have to give up that much in hindsight. Obviously, you send over a first-round pick, but in retrospect, DeMar was the top 10 to 15 player of the league last year. That's pretty darn good to get for only a first-round pick. So it's just unfortunate for Chicago.
Yeah,
that's the most we talk about the Bulls all year.
Yeah.
And
And until they get in trade rumors, unless anything drastic changes,
Probably won't talk about it
might be
again.
about it. Might be about it.
If any team was gonna be like a seller, which I don't really know who's even like looking to pick up a star. I think like in the player empowerment era and like so much like people moving to new franchises pretty commonly, it's just like you look around the league and it's like, say the Bulls were selling and they instantly said like, oh, like DeMar and Zach are both like open to be traded. I don't really know where they go. And not saying like they don't have value around the league. It's just like, where do they fit? Because it's like,
And who has the assets?
I'm sure DeMar at 33 and even Zach at 27, kind of getting into like traditional prime years. Like they don't want to go to a team that's not going to do something. But then it's like, look at the top 5-6 seeds on both sides, or at least who you think are like the top 5-6 teams overall. Like I literally have no idea where they would go.
I can't even think either. Like
neither. The league's in a weird spot right now because there's teams who have guys, Boston, Milwaukee, Golden State. Like they got their core, they're good to go. They've drafted well, or they already made their trade, like the Jrue Holiday move. They're good. You've got teams that just recently made a trade, so they don't have the assets. You think of Minnesota, think of Atlanta, you think of Cleveland. Those guys have already made their move. They've already sold away their assets. They've committed. And there's teams that are even on the bubble of that. I mean, Denver have got Jokic, Jamal Murray, and MPJ. They could move off of MPJ and assets to get something, or they could move off of Aaron Gordon and assets to get something. But is that overly likely? Not necessarily, but possible. Similar situation to Memphis, although that was probably pre-Desmond Bane looking like an all-star. I don't see a world now where they move off of him. Similar world with the Pelicans. They already made their move. They have assets, but they probably aren't moving off of anything. So there isn't anything super obvious right now. I mean, the only teams that are kind of in the mix that look like they could make a move is if the Pacers want to commit early, which seems unlikely. The 76ers already have their guys, so that seems unlikely. So there is very few options. I mean, Masai Ujiri might be in a market where there's not much competition and he gets to steal someone for cheap. That's one of the few teams around the league right now that could make a move and have some assets. Maybe the Mavericks try to make a move, but I mean, they're not exactly oozing with assets either. It is Luka and then not much from a player asset standpoint. It is just a lot of picks at that point. Maybe the Trailblazers want to commit a bit more, but again, their assets are limited unless they're moving off of Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons, which seems unlikely. So it's a weird trade market right now for sure. There definitely could be an unexpected move. I mean, Donovan Mitchell to the Cavs wasn't really rumored. Karis LeVert to the Cavs wasn't really rumored. So maybe the Cavs are just becoming the next Raptors where they just keep things on tight as far as the rumor mill goes. But on the surface, it certainly doesn't look like a big trade market year. I will note on the mention of the Bulls quickly that Vucevic is in the last year of his deal. So it is quite possible he's the guy they heavily shopped this year. But again, who wants Vucevic right now? And that's no disrespect to Vucevic, but like he's on a big contract. Sure, it's only 1 year, but you still got to make the salaries work. And he's not your prototypical defensively sound center that a contending team is bringing in. So I don't know, man. This trade deadline could be really quiet, or we're going to get some really random surprises.
The Knicks might have assets like to make a decent splash, but it's like any trade that they would make, it would just probably so they're not trying to be at the bottom end of the plan. Like the Heat wish they had assets, like they want these Bradley Beals and these Zach LaVine's, but realistically, they don't have anything to trade that's worth anything, as far as young assets. So it's like, it might be quiet. It might be a very quiet trade season, man. The buyout market might be bigger than anything, but back to you go ahead.
Like buyout market could be good, and maybe it's just more of some role player guys get dealt. Maybe we see a Kelly Oubre get moved. Maybe we see the Martin brother in Charlotte gets moved. If someone wants wing depth, maybe Bojan gets moved. Those types of guys, maybe even a Terry Rozier, like that might be one of the premier names of the trade deadline, which compared to last year is quiet, but that could be the type of year we're heading for.
Yeah, might be the year like when the Raptors went and got Marc Gasol, like small trades like that make the big difference. It might not be a James Harden for Ben Simmons swap. Like that's unlikely this season. It'll probably just be teams making those smaller moves that are like, like a Derek White type of trade, like things like that on paper, like they seem like just cool moves, short up the rotation, but can have a big impact, once you get to the later parts of the season.
Definitely. And we were spoiled last year, no doubt about it. I mean, that is not a typical trade deadline, that's for sure.
We had four all-stars get moved last deadline.
Yeah.
I'm saying Tyrese is an all-star, basically. Yeah. So like we have 4 all-star guys get moved, which is very unheard of. Crazy. It does not happen.
Definitely does not happen.
Even like back to like DeMar and Zach, like you mentioned the Blazers, they did come to mind, but I'm like, Anthony Simons has been so good. Would I rather have him or Zach LaVine right now? I don't know.
I don't know if that's a move you make, especially with LaVine's injury concerns. Like
exactly.
I don't know. I probably don't want to make that trade. That would have to be a like Nasir Little and something in picks, which Chicago probably aren't taking. So
Shaded short.
Yeah. I don't know.
But, it's a really weird dynamic. 'Cause for the longest time, I feel like teams were building like, oh, let's get together our big 3, and it's like, oh, everybody's either in their super late 20s or early 30s, and we're gonna bring them together. But it's like now, like, what team is really looking to bring in a 33-year-old third star, or even a 27-year-old third star actively? Like the Cavs made their big star trade, and Donovan Mitchell is what, 25?
Might have just turned 26, I think, but still young.
Something like that. But yeah, he feels younger because he stayed multiple years in college. But then like, yeah, like what, like I don't know, where do they go? Like, there's just the teams with the older cores just all seem to kind of be not very good. Like,
yeah, I mean, the
Sixers got James Harden.
Yeah, I mean, the only teams that we've talked about as legit contenders that have vets that are like early 30s, late 20s or older is the Bucks and the Warriors. And that's it. Boston are young. Pelicans are young. Memphis are young. The Cavs are young. Nuggets are young. Like, everyone's young.
And the Warriors are a 10 seed.
Yeah. Well,
like the older cores, it's like I know we started off with positive Lakers talk, but it's like their older core, like, not great. Clippers older core barely over 500. I don't know. He kind of I guess if like Jimmy Butler, I mean, Bam is like 26, 25. So that's a weird one.
Kyle Lowry.
Oh yeah, so yeah, they're kind of older.
They're in 2 years right now. I don't know. They're in a weird spot.
I guess Brooklyn might be a little bit of an older core.
Yeah,
I mean, they're a 4 seed right now, but what is Brooklyn giving away?
They ain't got no assets, man.
Nothing. So it's like,
even if they wanted to move Ben, Ben's been better recently, but it's like you're not getting James Harden. Sorry.
And it does just feel like every team is either pretty young, doesn't need to make a move, or is clearly like not trying to be good.
Yeah, and it's like the young teams, like we talked about, like Memphis has assets if they wanted to, but do they want to? Probably not, unless like just some crazy like Devin Booker became available or something like that. Like that's the only way that they're making a trade. Same thing with the Pelicans. It's like they could make a move, but is it worth it right now? Probably not.
Right, like, do the Kings make a move to like super cement themselves? But
even if the Kings, though, I feel like that'll be a move that's like what Devin was talking about, like one of those smaller deals that really will shore their team together, not like bring in another big name because just to be honest, they don't really have the means to do that, honestly.
No, they don't. They'd be we're looking to bring in another depth forward or something like that, or a better backup point guard if they don't like the way Davion's playing and they want someone else back there, something like that. But that's probably the type of moves we're seeing.
Yeah, we did get spoiled from last trade deadline and the off season too. So
we definitely did.
We're due for kind of a slow trade season, sadly, but it's about time.
Yeah, it's definitely time for a down year. I will say I don't understand why the Knicks are looking to move Cam Reddish and Emmanuel quickly if they need to get rid of Evan Fournier, but whatever, man.
Hey,
the Evan Fournier contract looked bad when it was signed. Cam Reddish played good to start the year, and Emmanuel quickly has been playing good as of late, and now it's all just crashing down on the Fournier contract, and they want to trade two of their best young players. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Cam Reddish or it's just like he just keeps running into bad situations, but I feel like same time last year we're just getting the same like, okay, Cam Reddish is being shopped. And then it happened and they were like, oh, he's on the Knicks. They need perimeter scoring. Didn't play. Then starts the season off well, like you said. Now he's back to not playing. It's just like, it's so odd because talent is clearly there. When you watch Cam Reddish, clearly has the talent. It's just like the opportunity is just not meeting his talent. And I don't know if it's him or if it's Tibbs just being the coach that he is. I don't know what it is, bro.
It's so weird, too, because they started him in 8 games. Mm-hmm. And now he's just not in the rotation. I don't understand how that changes so quickly.
Maybe him and Tibbs got beef or something, man. I don't know.
The Nick, man, the RJ extension doesn't look great.
He's been bad.
The RJ, he's like
can't defend him, man. He's
pretty clearly, I guess, like what the third best player on the team because Brunson's definitely been better. Julius Randle is like honestly pretty significantly more efficient while also being better at like every non-scoring aspect of the game than RJ Barrett.
Yeah,
Julius has been good, man.
Yeah, he's been solid.
RJ stunk. Oh, he's been bad.
Yeah, he's had a rough year, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. He kind of showed out like enough, and it was like, oh, he's gonna get this extension, and then he's gonna break through and be the leader of this team. And now he's like, you're a third option to Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, like you just look at like the 18 points. Even that's a step back from last season, which Brunson getting to the team maybe you expect, but in my mind, I was kind of expecting this can be the year, like Gabe said, like RJ said, he should ascend and be really good. And kill those Tyler Hero comparisons. Now it's like Tyler Hero might be better, honestly. Like
Tyler Hero is definitely to me. Tyler Hero is better.
And it's like I forget which game it was. They were playing somebody. I think they were playing the Bucks. There was like 30 seconds left in the game. They were down 3, but Mike Breen said they don't have to go for a 3. And what does RJ Barrett do? Comes down the court, pulls from 30 feet, misses, and they lose the game. Giannis had fouled out. They had every opportunity, and it's just like, nah, what is RJ doing? Kind of season has been for him, man. Hate to see it because I'm an RJ guy because I feel like he got hated on a lot when he was playing well, but now he's playing bad, and it's like I can't really defend you, bro. Like you have to be better. 40% from the field is not going to cut it.
Yeah, hopefully he can turn it around, but it's definitely been a rough year so far for him.
Yeah, comparing him to like directly to Tyler Hero, Hero has like 2 more points, 5% better from the field, like almost 8% better from 3. more assists, more rebounds, literally like everything. Tyler Hero clears him in everything this season. And so the comparisons might be dead, but it might be dead because Tyler Hero is better.
Are we seeing a Wiggins trajectory from RJ Barrett?
And what kind of depth is on the Heat to say like Tyler Hero is getting easier shots? Tyler, like,
no, I mean guys have been in and out of the lineup too. So it's like there's been more pressure on Tyler Hero.
Yeah. Right. Now Tyler Hero has like 17 games versus 25 for RJ, but still 17 games is enough sample size.
That's a decent sample size.
Definitely. Yeah, honestly, the way RJ is playing, I don't want to rule out a potential improvement, but honestly, an Andrew Wiggins career arc is probably not a bad trajectory of a projection of where RJ is going to be, because I think he has the competencies to still be like a really solid starter, but is he going to be a primary guy? I don't know. I'm not ruling him out yet, but it doesn't look good. I'll say that much. Definitely doesn't look good.
That shows you how difficult it is to scout talent like from high school and on, because it's like RJ was the best player in his class, and now it's like we're looking at him like he's got his payday and all, but it's like, is he ever going to be an all-star? I would probably bet on the side of no, as it looks right now. So it's like that just shows you how tough it is, and it took Wiggins like almost a decade to get his all-star game, which I still don't think he should have got it, but he did. But so like it shows you how tough it is to scout talent, man. Like a lot of dudes that are top 10 in high school, some of them don't even make the league. Some of them are never even a starter quality player in the NBA. And then it's like we see these days a lot of guys are outside the lottery, second round picks, some undrafted, being some of the more impactful players for their teams. Like it's crazy. It shows you how tough it is to like really have an eye for talent on the come up, man.
It is really tough. It is really tough. I mean, yeah, and there's just so much that goes into it, from just the actual transition of your skill to the intangibles of a guy fitting in the NBA, to just poor situations, whether it be an Andrew Wiggins, whether it be a Cam Reddish bouncing around teams, a guy like Lauri Markkanen who gets to Utah and starts to break out. I mean, there's so many different variables that go into it that it is really hard to identify the talent and even just to figure out what role to use them in. Like there's so much that goes into it. Speaking of young talent, given we were a little bit down on him a few weeks ago, I got to give Killian Hayes a shout out, given he has been playing like really solid basketball the last few weeks. So shout out to him. He's looking like a really solid point guard right now.
Thought that was like Kevin O'Connor's doing victory laps right now.
Definitely.
Shout out to Killian, man. The Pistons have been garbage, which I'm really upset about, but Killian's shown that maybe he's not going to be playing overseas next season or in the G League. Good for him, man. I'm happy to see it.
The Pistons, they stink, but still beat the Mavericks.
Not Luka's fault.
Have the Mavericks even lost since that game? I think that they might have spurred them, because that game, they fell 10-11 after that one, and maybe Killian Hayes turned the Mavericks up, but
they have beat the Suns and the Nuggets since then. So
the Killian Hayes game.
Shout out to Killian, man, inspiring teams.
Honestly, like, if you asked me who the worst player in the league was who got significant playing time like a year ago, there's a good chance he's getting the shout. But
easily the worst starter in the league last year that really started probably a good amount of games. He was bad last year for sure.
And now he kind of came up, man. I don't know. Could I tell you who the worst starter in the league is right now? Not really, no. I don't know.
Yeah, that's too early to call that.
Right. I feel like any team who has like I feel like any team who has like a bad starter, it's just because like other guys are out or injured, and it's like a guy who shouldn't be a starter, but just is because of circumstance.
Yeah.
Or you're the Spurs and you're starting Keita Bates-Diop every night. But I'm not gonna blame Keita Bates-Diop because he's a solid role player who just is being forced to be a starter.
Ohio State legend.
Ohio State legend, yes.
And he retired to Staples Center last year, man. I will never forget that game.
The Keita Bates-Diop game, bro. It's absolutely wild. I love when just like role players just have crazy games. Like, I wish I was watching when like Corey Brewer had a 50-piece or Terrence Ross had a 50-piece. Like,
that game was legendary.
Did you watch that game from start to finish?
Yeah, that was a great game.
That was a game to watch.
That was a great game.
Yeah, I think the best, like, I hate to say role player, but low key, when Derrick Rose dropped 50 on Halloween, that was magical, bro. Absolutely magical.
Yeah, that was a good night.
I think that's one of the few times I've had genuine chills watching a sports game.
Yeah, that was definitely a good moment. No doubt about it.
I can't believe this. We're 2 hours and 10 minutes in, and we got 2 hours of basketball talk. Is that a new record?
It might be.
It's been a minute.
Especially for an episode that doesn't have like one like super big overarching concept. Like if we were doing like Eastern Conference predictions and went 2 hours, like okay, but
I just had a lot to talk about this week. I feel like there was finally some scenes in the West that I have a bit of a consensus about. Finally.
Yeah, before we just been saying like it's random out there, like we don't know what to expect. But now it's like a couple of teams have separated themselves a little bit.
Jazz and Kings are still above the play-in though.
Shout out to the Kings, man.
Shout out to the Kings indeed. They've been the borderline top 10 defense over the last couple of weeks, which is great to see.
Yeah, looking at like their like last 10 games or so, even like last 12 games. Like a loss to the Hawks, which is like cool, but then like their other 3 losses is Bucks, Celtics, Suns. Like you can't really ask for much better. They're beating everybody who's not like the top of the top most of the time.
And they beat the Grizzlies. So
we'll probably have played Cleveland by the time this episode comes out, but then after that, like they for real don't have it too tough for a while. So they might rack up another pretty solid winning streak, or at least give themselves some even better positioning in the West, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if they keep playing good on the defensive end, they're going to win games because we know this offense is doing its thing. Even though De'Aaron Fox has been struggling a little bit, it sounds like he's dealing with a bit of an injury right now. So he might miss a bit of time just to rest up. But as long as they keep playing well defensively, they're going to be good because Herter was in a bit of a cold stretch, but looks like he's snapping out of that now. Sabonis continues to play at an all-star level. Malik Monk has been averaging like 18, 19 points a game over the last few weeks. He's been playing ridiculously well for them off the bench. So they look like they're in a good spot. When I'm watching games and Chimezie Metu was out there hitting a couple threes a game, you know they're in a good spot. So
that's crazy.
They keep playing well defensively. The offense looks fine. They should be able to remain competitive, man, which is just nice to see. Whether they stay as a 5 seed or they slip down in the play-in tournament, just seeing Sacramento in the mix and it looks like they should be able to remain in the mix is just a nice thing to see. We haven't seen this in a very, very long time.
I didn't realize they have Delhi on the roster. That's the fun fact of the day is that Matthew Dellavedova is on the Sacramento Kings right now.
Did y'all see that video of him shooting?
Some games with them. I don't know if I saw that video. I don't know if I saw that.
Oh God! Just look up. If you just look it up, you'll find it. I think NBA Central might have posted it, or NBA memes.
Do I want to see it?
It's kind of nasty. It's a nasty looking jump shot, man. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel like I might have seen it. I looked at Matthew Dellavedova on Twitter, and the first thing that came up was drop the most random Mike Breen bang call. Matthew Dellavedova. Bro, there's that tweet from 2020 that says Joe Burrow's favorite athlete in the world is Matthew Dellavedova. And there's like a video. That's crazy. That is crazy.
That is funny.
I'm sick, bro.
That's Steph Curry's dad right there. Kelly.
Oh my gosh, bro. You gotta stop. You're finished. Somebody get this guy out of here.
My bad. Too far.
Too far, bro. Hey, man. Honestly, though, Joe Burrow filed the adoption paperwork this week, so I'm cool.
Hey, man. If Joe Burrow gets me this fantasy ring, I'll call him top whatever. I'll call him the next Brady. I don't care. If he gets me this fantasy ring, hey, I'm with all the agenda pushing, man.
That's Joe, best quarterback in his class, Burrow.
If he gets me this ring, I'll stick with you on that narrative. If he loses it, I'm slandering.
If that's how you feel, man. If that's how you feel.
Slandering and praying for the downfall of the Bengals.
Joe Burrow would be the greatest quarterback of all time if he did not have to play against Cleveland.
That's what I'm scared about this week, man.
Yeah, you don't want to start Joe Burrow this week.
He's my only quarterback. I already went all in, man. Traded Justin Fields to get A.J. Brown as my wide receiver.
Oh, my God.
I trust Joe Burrow, bro.
You traded Justin Fields?
And, bro, I wanted a consistent wide receiver, too, because all year I've been flip-flopping from, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown to T. Higgins. I've just been flip-flopping, and I just haven't felt confident in either one. I'm like, bro, I want A.J. Brown, so I went and got him.
Yeah. Trading a second QB for more assets like that is always such a good move if you can do it. I never got the chance this year because when I wanted to trade Tua was on a bye week and no one wanted him, and it just didn't work because I have Tua in Fields now, but it is what it is. I don't really need anything now because now Marquise Brown is my receiver number 4 and Keenan Allen is my flex. So now that Keenan Allen is finally healthy, we are good to go, but it took a minute. Before I talk more fantasy football, I got a few more basketball points to make. Quick shout outs to AJ Griffin, who's looked really good lately.
Yes.
Now in the starting lineup for Atlanta while they deal with some injuries, he's looking like one of the better selections of the draft class so far, shooting really well from deep, attacking the rim fairly well, really good in transition and providing some good defense as well. So shout out to him for his production. Even though Minnesota haven't been as good as expected, shout out to Anthony Edwards over the last few weeks because he has finally showed some consistency and has not necessarily been at that hopeful dark horse MVP level, but he hasn't been far off, and he's been consistent on both ends. Even though his numbers look really good, he's also been really good defensively, and not that steals are anywhere near the be-all, end-all defensive stat. In fact, they're usually overrated. But he has been forcing a lot of turnovers lately, not to mention the fact that his on-ball D has been a lot more consistent as well. So he deserves a quick shout-out, and I got to do a homer shout-out. OG Anunoby deserves to be an all-star consideration. There's no doubt about it, and he is a big reason why the Raptors stayed afloat while Siakam was out, and even with him back, has still been playing at, I would argue, an all-star caliber level this season.
I like that. Ooh, OG, that's a bold one, man. I'll be interested if we did our ballots right now. Would he get your nod as an all-star?
I started making up mock ballots a couple of weeks ago when he was on it, but I'd have to see if he is today.
Interesting.
Where's the All-Star game at this year? Just real quick.
Utah, Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
JT said he was saying OG there, so.
I got a couple of shout outs too since we're doing shout outs, man. First off, we kind of mentioned him briefly earlier. Anthony Simons is really taking the leap. I love to see it, man. We saw it last year, like he became somebody that we thought that at least I thought has future All-Star potential. Averaging just under 25 points per game this season, been doing it with Dame missing some time. And the Blazers are still above 500. Now, they did drop in the standings, but that's just how tight the West is. You know, 1 or 2 losses in a row, you're going to drop a little bit. But Anthony Simons has been really good. So has Jeremy Grant, been playing really well. For a move that a lot of people kind of think undervalued a little bit in the offseason, you know, he's been playing really well. And this one, Kelly Oubre, man, he's been hooping. He's been playing really good basketball. 20 points a game, not something that I had on my bingo card before the season started. Kelly Oubre has been playing lights out basketball, and love to see it, man. Shout out to Oubre.
Definitely good picks. Definitely good picks.
I'm gonna give a shout out to the Brooklyn Nets because I was the king of positive Nets talk on the podcast, being real optimistic about what they could be, and so far since that, they've proven me right. Even Ben Simmons hasn't even been consistently in the lineup, and they've still taken a massive leap from what they were going from, like, is this team even going to make the playoffs, to now currently leading what I'll call the rest because, you know, like we said, top 2 within Cavs kind of in their own tier. Everybody else, the Nets are currently at the top of that. So, I mean, props to KD, props to the organization with just kind of turning things around as well as they could. I'm gonna give my other shout out to Zion, I think, just because I think he's finally beating the narratives of like, oh, Zion's gonna be injury prone and he's not gonna be able to like be a good number one on like a great team, and any sort of doubters that they were ever had about Zion and like being in the game, being able to maintain his level of play. Like, he's been playing super well recently, and now his team is in the 1 seed, so shouts to him as well.
Shout out to Zion, man. Another one I forgot, Jalen Green. I feel like his year 2 jump has been very under the radar. He's been playing really good basketball. It's just the Rockets aren't good, but seeing his jump makes it a lot promising that they made a very good draft pick with Jalen Green.
Definitely a good pick.
Might have to be a weekly trend. We just give shout outs.
Yeah, definitely needed sometimes. It's like, I don't need to talk for 5 minutes about the Timberwolves at all this week, but need to give Anthony Edwards some love. So
yes,
I'll talk.
Dare I say, man, if they start winning more and more games without Cat, there's going to be some type of discourse. There's going to be some dialogue.
Definitely.
It's going to
I think there's already dialogue. I saw some tweet that was like, I think it was like Gary Trent and OG for Cat or something like that. It was.
And let me tell you this.
I follow every time, bro.
I follow a few Timberwolves fans on Twitter. Even before the season, none of them really like Cat. They don't like Cat like that, honestly. No. So I'm sure the fan base wouldn't care if, as long as they got a competent return, they would not mind moving off of Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely depends on what they get back, but I think this team is built better if they move off of him. The problem is you then shorten your window a lot because Rudy's obviously a lot older, but
yes,
that's the concern. Is like, if a team's getting Cat, the team that's trading for him probably wants to give up future assets, and obviously that's not going to be to the interest of Minnesota. So I think it's pretty difficult to make a move there. Like you said, Gabe, obviously it's not a trade that happens, I don't think, but a situation where you're getting like an OG and a Gary Trent, guys that might be on the younger side but can make an impact immediately, that's the type of trade you're going to have to make. I don't want that trade, but that's the type of trade Minnesota are definitely going to have to look at if it's going to happen, and I don't think that exists. So
if Masai was crazy enough to offer that, I'm taking that.
Yeah, if Minnesota don't take that, they're crazy.
Like, it's literally the same thing of like, where does Cat even go, bro? It's just like the Bulls thing. Where does he even go? Because we were just talking earlier.
I don't know. That's even more unreal than the Bulls, honestly.
Right. Any team that may want a center that would have like either the money or like just some sort of ability to bring in Cat, like, what are they doing with a center that doesn't play great defense? What are they doing with a center that doesn't play great defense on the max deal,
If you're the
especially if you're
Blazers-
trying to compete for a title.
If you're the Blazers, do you make a cat trade? Give me, you don't have to give up
Not
Ant
opposed.
or Dame.
I'm not
If you don't
opposed.
give up Ant or Dame, how are you securing Cat? With all due respect, There's no way.
Sharp and picks. And I don't know if that's
Nurkic,
enough.
Nurkic, Jeremy Grant picks.
Timberwolves are trying to win.
Nurkic being your backup big, start Jeremy Grant at the 4. Hell, throw in Shaedon Sharpe too.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably have to be in there. Yeah, I don't know.
Look, we'll keep our picks, but we'll throw in Shaedon Sharpe because he's a first round pick.
Giving up, I don't know about that.
Why not? Would you trade if you're the Suns, would you make a cat trade? Because obviously DA doesn't want to play real basketball.
That team is way worse if they trade for Cat.
Okay.
The only reason that team is relevant in the regular season is because of good defense. They lose that if they get Cat. So
I want to say Dallas, but they don't have anything to give up.
no.
I might be Dallas's biggest op, bro. Maybe they should trade for Cat.
What would they give up though? Like realistically,
Just trade.
Tim Hardaway's contract.
Just trade Luka.
He's been their second best player too the last week and a half.
Trade Luka, blow it up. Just
Trade Luka.
Dare I say the Pelicans?
Yeah. JV and Dyson Daniels.
Stop it,
Throw in
bro.
a first if you need.
Daniels. We got picks. We got the Bucks picks. We have our own. Don't they got I think they have a pick from somebody else too. I mean,
If the Pelicans trade for Cat, bro, that would be kind of crazy. If they were able to pull that off without completely destroying their depth. That's the thing I hate is when teams do buy in for a star and they have no depth and then they have that one injury and then they're just in shambles. Like, if they can do it without destroying their entire depth, they might be the best fit, but also you're bringing in a player who needs accommodations into a 1 seed.
Just sit him in the corner, man. Shoot threes from the corner, Cat.
I'm sorry, I'm not trading
That'd
for a
be
max
funny.
player. If you trade for a max player and tell him to sit in the corner, you lost. You lost.
The Cavs did that with Kevin Love. They won a championship.
They had the arguable greatest player of all time. That's different.
That's true. That's true.
Zion is not the arguable greatest player of all time, as much as I like him.
Not yet.
Not yet. Zion.
Hey, that's y'all's top 4 power forward. I say give me Siakam.
Hey. Siakam's team, he wasn't even there. And they're still only the 7th seed.
Yeah, all the teams that have the assets probably will be like, is it worth it? Probably not.
Does Cat contribute to the most important statistic in basketball?
I mean, he's not a defensive center, so Dev's turned off by that.
He's not
Fifth best center in the league. I don't know what to tell you. That take's looking pretty good right now.
It is. I will admit that is looking good. The Kawhi number 1's not.
Yeah, that one's a little bit rough. We forget about that one. We don't worry about that one.
We just gotta take our dubs as they come.
What? I should have put Devin Booker above Paul George, and my list would have been perfect, man.
Should have.
Steph Curry, Jason
We were scared to
Tatum,
do it.
Giannis.
Look, I had a few gutsy picks, and some of them were looking good, and then some of them were Donovan Mitchell and Kawhi Leonard. So some you hit, and
Forgot about
some you
Donovan
definitely
Mitchell
miss.
We gotta
CJ White's
revisit.
not looking great either, to be fair.
We have to revisit our list at the end of the season and just see
Definitely.
You'll
our
understand
dubs and our L's.
how I made
when we're
only good takes.
When we're 3 weeks post the trade deadline and we got nothing to talk about,
Yes.
that's definitely something we're
Got
pulling
to.
out for sure.
Literally,
For sure.
I only good takes. Only good takes. Only L take. I'm so sorry for this. Is my 1 seed predictions. One is in the 8 spot and one is in the 9 spot.
Hey, one of my 1 seeds is 500 right now, but the other one is the best team in basketball. And I said the Bucks would be a 2 seed, and they are.
True.
I'm just saying.
Dang,
Yeah.
Reek knows a lot of things. Barik may know hoops.
I'm gonna take those dubs, and I'm ignoring the Grizzlies at 8. I don't even remember saying that. Anything else that was outlandish, I'm ignoring it.
I'll take my Goblin.
You might have to ignore Chris Paul at 6. I'm not gonna lie.
Did I have CP that high?
I feel like you did.
You did.
I feel like you did. May have to ignore.
I had Darius Garland top 5 though. I'm pretty
Gabe
sure.
was very low on Darius Garland. I do not remember where, but
I
think he had him like 7 or 8 or something. He had Darius Garland.
I think I had him at 7 because I think I had him at like 7.
Bro's averaging 24 and 8 with another all-star guard in his backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
He improved with another all-star guard coming to his team.
Well, maybe if he played for the Clippers, he would have been higher on my list. But unfortunately, I do have a bias against anything that comes out of the city of Cleveland, self-admitted. So I do.
You got Reggie Jackson, top 5 point guards.
I did think that factored in. Unfortunately, the Clippers do not have a top 5 player.
Zubac might be top
10. Now.
Zubac might be top 10.
Zubac might be the best player on that team, for real.
Low key.
Hey, beating the Heat right now, though.
Kawhi's funny, man. He just nonchalantly came back, hit a game winner. And he's probably not playing tonight.
I don't want to talk about Kawhi. I don't want to talk about Kawhi, bro.
Yeah, no Kawhi tonight.
No Kawhi talk. Gotcha.
No Kawhi talk ever, bro. No Kawhi talk until he plays 5 games in a row.
Well, he's never going to play 5 games in a row until the playoffs, so.
I don't think he's ever going to play 5 games in a row again. Yeah.
Don't say that.
Yeah, please don't.
Kawhi may be banned from the podcast. I don't know.
Kawhi will never be banned from the podcast. He's too important of a member of 2 members of the pod for winning reasons. So
yeah, I like Kawhi too, man. Beat the Warriors.
Yeah, bro. I remember he was doing some crazy stuff on the Spurs, man.
He was
when he was gonna beat the KD Warriors.
God, don't start that.
Yeah, we gotta end this basketball talk real quick.
True, that's true. I understand.
That would have been gentleman sweep. Respectfully.
I know, because Curry would have came in and averaged 40 for the rest of the series. So he would have taken it personal then.
No, Kate
really put on an all-time great performance. I don't know who that is. All I know is Kurt Choke.
Kurt not top 5. Oh God.
Kevin Durfraud. I don't know about him, man.
Bruh, I think he's a part of. It's a brand called Boardroom, or like I don't know what it is. Maybe a network or something. They drop these TikToks where they ask Katie just like quick, like rapid fire questions, and the one I saw today, he asked him like, "What's like the biggest insult you always get?" And he was like, "That I'm ashy." I thought that was hilarious, man.
Oh my God.
I thought that was hilarious when I saw that. Like, Katie's a funny guy. He's really a funny dude.
He is. He's funny. I will give him that.
His Twitter responses, I think it's a dub. I like that he does it personally. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's so soft. But at the end of the day, bro, if somebody's doing that to me, I'm probably doing the exact same thing. So him just being a regular guy, I don't hold athletes to a crazy standard, bro. Like you're really good at what you do, but yeah, you're still a person. You just play a sport instead of like doing surgeries or something, you know.
It's like he makes a joke out of it too, which I find even more amusing. Like he doesn't take it as he maybe used to take it serious, but now it's just like he trolls back, which I enjoy. I like a good troll.
Him talking about the Commanders all the time is crazy too, bro. Commanders deserve absolutely nothing as a franchise. I'm sorry, KD.
Currently in playoff position though. I think they're 7-5-1, something like that.
They still deserve nothing, bro. Until Snyder sells the team.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Until he sells the team and until they get a new field.
Their stadium is
team deserves absolutely nothing.
Yeah, their stadium is horrendous. But one thing though, we need to abolish ties in sports. Like,
Yeah,
teams should not be able to end a game with a tie.
Bro
that
hates
definitely needs to
soccer.
be a thing.
Bro,
And there's
absolutely
no way
despises
they'll ever be
soccer.
able to do it in soccer, but there
Oh,
definitely
yeah,
needs
no
to be a way to
size.
do it in football for sure.
Bro despises soccer with his whole being.
Soccer, I can kind of understand because those are 90-minute games. I kind of get it.
I'm not watching
football?
90 minutes to see a 0-0 game, bro. I'm sorry.
But football, like, come on, bro. You telling me these teams are going to battle it out, play 10 minutes in overtime, and then that's just it. Nobody wins. Fans pay all this money. People bet all this money on this game. You're just going to end in the tie. Like, come on. Y'all got to get rid of that, man. Like, at least do something like what college football does or something, bro. Like, that's just I can't get behind that, man. Every time I see a tie in the NFL, I get mad. I get pissed. They gotta change that.
Yeah, definitely needs to be changed. We can continue with this, but do we got anything basketball left for today, or are we ready to wrap
Bro, it's
up?
been 2.5 hours, bro.
I thought we was cooked on the NBA talk.
I thought so too. I was just gonna make sure, and then I'll outro it so we can separate the episodes there.
Nah. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for tuning into our basketball segment of the 3 Point Weekly podcast. If you guys want to hear more about our football and fantasy football conversations and much more, then be sure to tune into our after show episode, which will be coming out a few days after the release of this one. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But if you did enjoy the NBA portion of this week's content, then be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more episodes. And we'll see you guys next week.